started?
I think so.
Good evening, everyone. I will open up tonight's Mashpee Conservation Commission meeting for Thursday, April 3, 2025. Tonight, we are meeting in the Wacoit Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North. Our meeting will be broadcast live on local cable channels 8 and 1072, streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website, and also available through a hybrid remote version through Zoom. Before we begin, if you would like to join me in a Pledge of Allegiance, please do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin, I'll take a call for a moment of silence. Thank you. I will take public comment first for any issues that are not related to agenda items that we have posted for tonight's meeting. So if there is someone that would like to address the commission, this would be the time. Nobody from the public here, nobody online, Dan, that
No one online.
wants to talk with us? I guess we're good on that.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so I will skip over the pre and post hearing agenda items, and I will go right to our first order of business. Now calling the hearing for 45 Manitoba Road, Martin V. Vachakovic and Deborah L. Vachakovic, proposed removal of trees. Representative is the owner. This is a request for determination of applicability, and I believe the owner is online. There he is.
Okay.
Good evening, Tom.
Good evening.
If I could just have your name for the record so that gets into the audio, and then we can begin.
Tom Vakovic.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So we have your correspondence from the arborist that you engaged with. If you would like to just fill the commissioners in a little bit on what you discovered, and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. I don't know if you were able to get the photos.
I did, yes.
Okay. So you asked me to get an expert in, and we did. And we actually found significant damage to the trees that Daniel suggested that might actually be occurring. So there is significant amount of damage that is going to require the trees to come down anyway. I can go through the different photos of each and every one of them, but I'm not sure if that's necessary. But I employed a person to come, and there's a lot of tree damage that we were unaware of that is requiring these trees to be removed mostly through damage. Then the one tree we talked about on the left side, which was root, is also a damaged tree as well. So not only is it affecting my root, my foundation cracking as pictured, but it's also a damaged tree that the arborist suggested that we should remove anyway. So I've got everything that was suggested. I provided pictures of all the different damages on all the trees, and we would like to get the okay to get these down as soon as possible so they don't create any more damage from the bugs and from any kind of rotting that's occurring.
Very good. Okay, let me, I'll turn it over to commissioners for any specific questions they may have. They may want to take a look at those photos, I'm not sure. All right?
Okay?
So-
Mr. Chairman, Tom Vakovic and his wife are my clients, so I'm going to recuse myself from
Okay,
any
so Steve,
deliberations.
you're out of this.
Yep.
Okay. Other commissioners that would like to ask questions based
Do
on...
we have the photos, Mr. Chairman?
They were sent in, they were sent out by Stacy. With all the
They went out-
files.
Dan, Dan sent
Or, no,
sent
Dan
them
sent them out.
Yeah, I sent that, it was with the tree health report. It was an extra like 3 or 4 pages on it, yeah.
My bad.
Yeah, there was an invoice for a certain amount of work to be
Yeah.
done, and then the photos were attached under, I think there were like 8 or 9 of
See,
them.
that's why I didn't.
Yeah, so there was 5 trees total. It came out to 2 pitch pines, the maple, I believe, on the side, and 2 black oaks that were, had damage at the base.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Good evening, Tom. Hi.
Hello?
I'm curious to know, from the pictures, it's unclear to me if all of the trees that were in the original RDA application have been assessed as being damaged. I heard 5 trees, but I seem to recall there were 7 in the original application.
There actually looks like there are 8 trees that are damaged, either at the root structure or through the bugs. And they are all except the 2 in the back left corner, which are not damaged, and I wanted to remove those for a patio area, but unfortunately for me, I can't remove those because there's no damage to the tree. I still think it's a threat to my home, but mainly I would like to have created a patio back there, but these are the trees that were on the original list, except for the 2 in the back.
Except for the 2 in the back, okay. Yeah,
Right.
what I have in front of me just doesn't have a number on it for how many. It just says remove all the damaged trees. So that's
Yeah.
helpful. And so then the RDA that we would be adjudicating would be the removal of these 6 trees, or would it also incorporate all the landscaping changes that we had discussed at the last hearing as well?
That will be up to all of us to deliberate upon when a motion is set forth.
Okay.
But to clarify, in the agent's report, it is 5 trees, 1 maple, 2 oaks, and 2 pitch pines.
It wasn't the request just for the tree removal. The request wasn't for any landscaping or anything like that.
Well, there would be mitigation that would be proposed for the trees that are coming out. He did have some,
Right.
there were several small evergreens that were planted that were going to be moved from one planted area over to some other part of the lot.
And then Stacy, if I have you correct, we're going to do additional trees, cosmetic trees that are appropriate to the landscape so that we can continue to enhance our property after the trees are removed. And we're going to see how much sun comes in and what kind of shade and whatnot has occurred. I provided a picture last time I was with you to show you the type of landscaping that we do, and it will be nothing short of spectacular when we're done.
That's fantastic. I think we also discussed some of the restrictions, just given the location and in Mashpee in particular for landscaping plants and in particular fertilizer application. So I'm not sure if we had requested a planting plan or if that would be subject to a separate RDA, but I know I had some concerns about some of the landscaping plans in addition to the trees coming down.
So again, once a motion is presented, if you want to attach some conditions to that motion, that would be the appropriate time to talk about landscaping, so to speak, with or without a plan. Whether it be up to the conservation agents to supervise and monitor, or you could be very specific at that point in the deliberations.
Was there any talk of mitigations prior to him, in the last RDA? It was just the tree removal, correct?
It was a tree removal, but then the owner did talk about transplanting some of the smaller evergreen trees that were along the property line. I forget which direction that was, the westerly side, maybe?
Well, everything, I'm going to put the green trees on the left side and the back side and on the right side for privacy, which they are already in the ground. But my concern is that these are so bug infested and so rotted that any kind of additional landscaping should be negated in turn. I'm going to do it anyway, and I understand that you don't believe everybody that what they say, but these trees are so rotted that and bug infested that the removal should be granted just simply because they're so bug infested.
Sure.
Yeah. So we can,
But I'm
Go ahead,
just going to go
Sean.
back to the original proposal that we heard at the last meeting, focused on the removal of the 8 trees and moving the evergreens. It didn't contemplate a patio or any other kind of landscaping than that. So I just want to make sure that
Right.
whatever we talk about today tucks to the original, which I think is what you're getting to, Sarah. We're not having scope creep on the decision we're making today.
Right. This RDA is strictly for the removal
Removal
of
of the
trees.
trees, right?
It's not for construction of any patio or anything like that.
That was my understanding.
Right. Yeah, you're correct.
Okay. And if Tom wants to go ahead and blow out his landscaping plan or add any kind of outside living area, we'd be expecting another
Separate filing.
separate filing to come back.
Exactly.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Other questions or concerns from commissioners? Okay,
I
hearing.
have just a general question, like
Yes.
with the turpentine beetles and the stuff that's running rampant, what do we do, like, what's the get rid of the beetle strategy?
You
Identifying
didn't get
it.
the report that said get rid of beetle strategy?
It is identifying the tree. when it's
Just
first
taking the tree out,
infected or when it is
there's
then-
no insecticide applications or anything like
There
that?
probably is
Okay.
insecticide or some kind of application. I know there's a couple companies in the Cape that deal with things of that nature for tree health. But usually it's remove the tree because it's extremely fast acting. It just stops the tree from being able to breathe.
Okay,
So it's unfortunate. So yeah, it is remove the tree and literally haul the logs out.
logs
of there.
off, okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to the agents first. I see that Drew is online.
Yep, so thank you, Paul. So just to clarify, the original proposal for 8 trees included creating a space for storage for the boat and jet skis, as the commissioners may recall.
Yep.
That's what we as agents had an issue with because of the 20% rule to retain natural vegetation on the lot, which is pretty much right where it's at, not discounting the removal of the trees. But I just want to set the number to be clear. It's 5 trees, it's not 8. It's 5 that were examined by the arborist and 5 that were determined to be, posing a risk in the event of failure. So I just want to make that clear. We're talking about 5 trees, not 8. The other trees were in an area that was proposed to be cleared for storage of boat and jet skis. So from the last hearing, it was really focused on getting an arborist assessment for these 5 trees, dealing with this safety situation. And then anything else he wants to do should come back with a new application.
Okay,
May I make, Drew, if you had photo number 10 and 12, those are significant bug damage which were not on the original plan to be removed. We can leave them standing there, but those are the worst bug infested ones that are on that property near where the jet ski was going to be placed. So I would like to offer removal of those 2 trees in addition to the 5, because those are the worst. Look at the pictures. Those are the worst 2 that we have for bug infested. There you go. There's the pictures.
11
Picture 10 and 12.
and 12.
Okay, yep, I see that.
Those are bad.
Yeah.
So I'd like to remove those. I'd like to remove those as well.
Okay. Yeah, what I would suggest then as a commissioner's vote negative determination is that we have a pre-on-site meeting with staff just to verify the total number of trees to be removed, take a look at them in the field to make sure that, they have been infested and damaged, just to verify that. And also, because we're in the time of year where the temperatures are warming, any pitch pines that are removed, the stumps should be grinded out entirely, because if not, they will leach sap and attract additional borer beetles. That's standard forestry practice when it comes to invasive pests. So I would make that part of the motion and a condition that the stumps must be grinded out and thoroughly removed for the pitch pines.
That is on the application, that's on the proposal to grind every stump. But if we delay any further action, then I would say forget it. I'll leave the 2 that are fully infested with the pitch pines. I don't want to do.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a delay, sir. We'll get on it right away. I'm not looking to delay anything.
Okay.
Okay. Anything further from the agents? No? Anything from the public? Questions or comments? No? Okay. So we're all tidied up here. I'll accept a motion.
Make a motion for a negative determination of 45 Manitoba with the condition to stump grind all the stumps and to have staff go out and verify that the other 2 trees are infested, and then he can move forward with cutting them all down.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second? Marjorie? Open for discussion amongst commissioners only. We all set?
I heard the recommendation loud and
Yes.
clear for grinding the stumps for the pitch pines. I do think there's a benefit to the soil stabilization and also to wildlife if we consider, if the applicant would consider leaving the stumps for the other tree species. That's a practice I've seen in other places, especially for, I think it's the oak that has, the 2 oaks that have the
2
cavities.
oaks and 1 maple, right?
Yeah. So we could leave it at the discretion of the owner, but I think that maybe the negative determination language should only specify the stumps be grinded out for the pitch pines, given the impact to the infestation, so that we have a little leeway to retain some of the other benefits of those trees to that property.
Right. The one that's doing damage to the foundation, that's not a pitch pine, is it?
No, it's maple.
That's
Which one's
maple.
that one? Is
So
that the
it would
maple?
be difficult to get the root structure of that regardless, because you'd be
Damage
into
the house,
damaging the foundation.
right.
And maybe some of the pitch pines that are coming out, they could be ground down to just beneath the level of the soil and then buried. I don't think that would prevent the beetles from being attracted. In other words, don't take it all the way down or pull out the roots and everything, just
Sure.
take it down below the surface if you
Just to
would,
stop the sap.
you know, so that sap isn't exposed.
Sure.
That'd be the best of both worlds, perhaps. Anything else before I call for a vote? You set? Okay, so Marjorie? You're
Yes.
first. Yes. Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're all set, sir. You'll be in touch, or the agents will be in touch with you, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, does that mean I can give authorization to the tree company to come in, or am I missing something?
I believe you're all
Got to call Drew, I think.
set. You want to check in with staff here at the town hall and the conservation department. They'll want to go out and tag the trees, visually look at those that you've photographed to make sure we get the right trees, and then you're set to go.
Okay, very good.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you. All right. Moving on.
All right.
Our next hearing is 27 Sturgis Lane, Darrell S. Sharp. This is a proposed installation and maintenance of a seasonally developed aluminum dock, replacement of existing timber stairs, and repair of existing pump house and deck. Representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. This hearing is continued from February 20th of 2025. It's a notice of intent, DEP file number 433219. Good evening, sir. If you could have your name for the record, we can get started.
Good evening, Chuck Rowland, Cape and Islands Engineering. I'm here before you representing Darrell Sharp for 27 Sturgis Lane. Is this microphone working all right? Hello? Yep.
I think it is.
As you said during your description of the project includes the reconstruction of existing timber stairs, deck leading to Mashpee Pond, repairing the pump house, deck repairs to be completed in the existing footprint, and the work
Yeah, no, I don't know
as well as the installation of the gravel driveway in the previously approved footprint under DEP 432991. The existing sheds will be relocated outside the 100-foot buffer as part of that. The pier will measure 70 feet long and will rest on pile-supported posts. The pier sections are run up
Feel like it.
and will be connected
Commissioner.
to the existing deck, which will be maintained, which abuts that existing shed, as well as connecting to the proposed stairway for access down the bank. Prior to the start of work, erosion control will be deployed as shown on the plan, stabilize the bank. So this has been part of a revision to, in response to some of the butter notes. We feel that we have addressed a lot of those concerns. This latest iteration has shifted the gravel driveway off of the abutter's property to provide a buffer. The pier shows a dimension of a little over 26 feet to the abutting property line at the start and 27 feet at the end. Most of the properties on this lake have piers generally that are this long. My client will be using this pier for access to the water, as he is an avid fisherman and sportsman, and wants to be able to continue to use this property and the pier for sporting activities. So I think that you have all, I'm assuming you've all either been to the property or are familiar with it. There was a previous filing that was withdrawn, and this is essentially the same project that is.
I'm wondering if that has been considered, or that might be an alternative to protect the stabilization of the lower part of that inland bank.
So it is a set of stairs going down the bank. I'm sorry if I use the term boardwalk, as that's what I usually use for saltwater structures, but it is a raised structure going down, connecting to the existing timber deck.
Okay. So it's elevated above?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. And then have we heard anything back from Natural Heritage or Mesa?
I submitted to Drew a comment letter that we had previously received from NHESP. I don't
You all
think they
seen
had
that?
any.
I have not.
Okay.
But
I think I
believe-
sent it to Drew,
believe
and
that's in the record. Hold on 1 minute. Dan, you have a
Yeah,
copy
so I
of that?
pulled it up with the original, because this application was filed for, and you requested a continuance, so this is the
Oh,
first
wow.
time we're hearing it. It was with the original supplemental information they submitted it with, so I do have it here from November 14th.
Okay.
They have it, so,
What did they say?
yeah. It resulted in a note-taking concern.
Okay. Okay, great. And then just want to, just wanted to mention also in the corner of the property, just before we get outside that 150-foot buffer marker, there's a pile of some automotive fluids just sitting on the property up against the fence. Can you get those?
I don't think I'm aware of those, but I will make sure that we get those removed.
I'd be glad, yeah, I can show you a picture. I'd be glad to show you.
You don't have to show, I trust you.
Cool, thanks.
I will make
If
sure
we
that-
could get those removed.
What corner of the property, sir? Excuse me, I didn't get that. What corner of the property are you referring to?
It's in the northeast, yep, northeast corner right here, up
Northeast
against the
corner.
fence.
Okay.
Yep, there's a tire and some automotive fluids just hanging out.
So where the driveway's proposed to come in? is
Yes.
it- yeah.
And it's very, it's, if they leak, they're going right into the pond. So, yeah, I think those were, oh, no, one other question. I'm so sorry, Chuck. I'm getting my act together. So, I just wanted to confirm that the pier is going to be on footings. We're not actually putting pilings into?
Yes, they're going to be on the 6 by 12 inch feet.
Footings, or are you installing piles?
No, they're going to be on like feet, like square feet,
Okay.
concrete, aluminum feet that rest on
Okay.
the bottom.
Okay. And would the applicant be open to any upland mitigation?
we're happy to talk about it. Obviously, we'd rather not, as it was previously approved, but we're open to discussions on that.
Okay. And the pier was previously approved?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, but the installations down at the base of the,
No, I thought you were referring as mitigation in reference to the proposed driveway, but no, the pier and the access stairs were not previously approved.
that's my understanding. Okay, and the applicant would be open to some upland mitigation, maybe some buffer there, given the aspect of the lot and the work that's being done?
We're always open to just,
Okay.
well, the last thing we want to do is not get the project approved over some planting,
Take
so.
off the Concom. Sure, sure. Okay, well, I'll defer to the rest of the commission with any other questions or recommendations therein, but
Okay.
that's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. Someone else? Questions or comments?
So the
Shauna?
the pier will be taken out off-season, correct?
Originally, we had discussed keeping it in year-round. I think that usually on this water body, people usually remove them in the wintertime. I know that in the narrative, we had left in there that it would be seasonally removed. I think that usually this commission does not allow piers to be left in year-round, but I'll leave that up to you.
You can put that in as a condition?
I think as a condition, I guess, it's, the current owners have owned this property for a long time.
Very long time, yes.
And the property has not, been well maintained. And even if we narrow to the construct we're doing, the pump house is basically gone to ruin. The embankment stairs that had been put in have been left to rot. The site has not been well maintained, or well loved, I'll say, maintaining. So I guess my concerns is if all this work is not maintained properly, are we going to end up in a worse situation than leaving the site the way it is now and just letting it kind of go fallow? So I would like to kind of have some assurances, and maybe this is, an order of condition or something like that, that we have some kind of oversight or maintenance, that the dock's getting pulled out, and everything's kind of staying the way and built, however it ends up being built, it ends up being maintained as it's being built. I think my worry is that we got an overhead grate, so the bank now is, you looked at that bank and it's very, very steep. So to me, playing around with that bank is very dangerous, so that if the boardwalk, if the overhead's not maintained and that starts to cave in or rot on top of this, then the bank's just gonna be stressed more.
We're open to the annual reports, or maybe every other year for them until it gets closed out, the project gets closed out or something like that.
I just have a question I don't know the answer to, but is it the commission's purview to request maintenance of a structure once it's in, or?
We could request that it be removed seasonally.
Yes.
Yep.
That, but I'm saying as far as maintenance, does he, I'm not saying it, but does he do anything to the dock itself or the piers? Is it in our purview to say, oh, this one's damaged, you need to take it out?
Well, it's an aluminum, so
But
it's
out
not
to the
gonna
step, all the steps coming down,
Right.
Not unless it has to do with, I would think vegetation on the bank, right? Like if it's mitigation plantings, that would be within our purview to maintain,
Right.
just to make sure they survive.
Actual
the
maintenance.
mitigation, but
Yep.
not the actual.
And then stabilization of the
steps.
actual bank, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. I don't think so.
Right.
What's the construction material for the stairs? Is that aluminum as well?
No, that would be a typical timber construction, post in the ground, dug in. Just typical pier, stair construction.
Other questions or comments? Sandy?
Hi, I'm assuming we haven't gotten a letter from NHESP.
That was covered in the marine fisheries letter. They did actually comment on that. They were commenting on behalf of the natural heritage and endangered species, it says. Yep.
Where some of the commissioners have not seen that, Dan, would you read their comment into the record?
Yeah. So where am I? So the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program, Massachusetts Division Marine Fisheries, received a notice of intent site plan dated June 17th, 2024, no revisions, prepared by Cape Islands Engineering.
Slow down and speak up.
Oh, all right, I can slow down and speak up. So, in compliance with the Rare Wildlife Species section of Mass Wetlands Protection Act, Regulation 310, CMR 1059, the division also received the MESA review checklist and supporting documentation for review pursuant to Mass Endangered Species Act regulations. Based on the review of the information that was provided and the information that is currently contained in our database, the division has determined that this project, as currently proposed, will not adversely affect the actual resource habitat of state-protected rare wildlife species. Therefore, it is an opinion that the project meets the state-listed species performance standards for the issuance of an order of conditions. Please note that this determination addresses only the matter of rare wildlife habitat and does not pertain to other wildlife issues that may be pertinent to the project. So, and then, yeah, it goes on to explain it.
That's
Much better.
Thank you. I don't mind the comments. So.
Other questions, Sandy?
Did we get the ZBA?
ZBA's been filed.
Yes, that was just today, I believe.
I don't know when
So-
filing was done.
Yeah, we,
but
we just received it this afternoon.
Yes.
So it was filed today.
I do not know when it was
Oh.
filed, but I do know that the department notified your department that it
Okay.
had been filed, and I think that notification was done today,
Okay.
but I think that ZBA was filed previous to today.
Other questions, Sandy?
No, I guess
Okay,
we were uninformed.
well,
Sure.
anything else?
I do have one question.
Sure, Steve.
So Chuck, can we put I'm looking at the driveway gravel, that's going right into lawn? Is that,
Yes.
okay. Can we place a berm on the east and south side of that driveway and put in a dry well to capture any heavy rain off? Because you have a 12-foot drop across the whole length of the driveway.
Yeah, I did show it pitching into the slope, so that way any runoff would run back into the driveway as opposed to run over the bank, run towards the lake. So we're happy to put in a berm, just timber ties at the end. We're happy to do that, contain any stone.
Yeah, if
We'd-
you
we'd
maybe
rather-
do a 2-foot, vegetated berm with, just with, fescue grass or something like that. That's a foot high, just to stop any heavy rainwater coming in, or, and put in a dry well down there too. Because you're looking at the grade, you have 80 and 79.8, so it's only 4/10 of a foot across the driveway. So you get a real heavy rainstorm over a 12-foot drop, you could get runoff, so.
We're definitely happy to put in the berm. Yeah, my client's been adverse against putting in drainage structures. They get fairly costly on a project,
Okay.
a smaller project of this scale. But
All right, so if you pitch it back away and have a berm on the east and south side, that should
we're happy to do that.
take care of
yeah.
that. At least keeps any spill off from running further down towards the lake.
And it'll just get absorbed through the porous driveway.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alex?
I would just echo the sentiment of mitigation plantings. I mean, when you look at the square footage under the statistics for proposed pier, you have 936 square feet within the 0 to 75 buffer and 783 square feet. There should absolutely be mitigation plantings for that too. It's a little different because it's a pond. We're used to seeing docks over salt water, which is then where we get the shellfish contribution to the shellfish fund, but mitigation plantings are within our purview for the square footage within the resource area per all of our mitigation standards. So I think for a lot of it, you'd be looking at 2 to 1, because it's directly over the pond. So if that could be done in a way maybe to help any runoff, so that the runoff would be going into where the mitigation plantings would be, and then kind of along that bank, I would think. And I apologize for being late. I thought we started at 7. I thought it was early, so.
We talked about you the whole time.
You're early for the next hearing.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I've got a few questions. On the plan, it says previously approved gravel drive to be installed per DE file number 432991, which expires 3/11/25. Baxter and I plan dated 10/26/2018. So I'm trying to get a handle on the history here.
Yes.
So we had an order of conditions that was approved by
Yeah.
this board in
Yes.
2018. And that order of conditions would have had all of our boilerplate language, plus any special conditions, i.e. mitigation, because this driveway was being proposed back then. So I assume, even though the mitigation would be less because we've beefed up Regulation 12, there had been some mitigation that was proposed earlier. I looked at the plan of 10/26/2018, and that plan shows a fairly good-sized dry well in the proposed driveway. So if this plan is saying that it's to be installed per the other plan, where's the dry well?
I mostly meant to refer to the layout of the, as opposed to it being installed with a dry well. If that's a major issue, we're happy to discuss putting in a dry well.
Well, I'm hearing a concern from commissioners in terms of a berm to catch water that's going down and extra mitigation that may be grabbing water that's going down. And I'm thinking about that old plan that I saw just a couple hours ago. And I'm wondering why there isn't a dry well, because that would help as well. But let me continue. You can dwell on that for a minute.
Sure.
My next question would be, if there were an order of conditions that was passed by this board, I wasn't here then, I assume it was recorded on the deed. Is there a certificate of compliance to take that off the deed? Or
To
is
my
that still
knowledge,
sitting
there
there,
has
even
not
though-
been a CO certificate of compliance, and the certificate of compliance has not been requested either, but
Right. I don't know on an expired order. We can ask the
You
agents
don't,
that.
you wouldn't do a certificate of compliance because it wasn't done. It's not in compliance with the order.
I would believe that someone would have to state that no work was done on that order to get that order of conditions, that lien on the property, off. They'd have to request a COC saying there was no work done on it. We've had those before, so that the deed is cleared of that other notice of intent, OOC, that was issued.
I see what you're saying.
which
So
we're happy to, which we're going to be doing after this.
That, in terms of legalities, if it was my property, I'd want that lien off of it real quick, because that order is sitting there. The Registry of Deeds doesn't know that there was no work done on it, so you should state to the commission or to the agents that no work was done, request a COC, clear that up, and because you're referring to it right here on the plan of record, so right away it's a red flag for me, like, okay, well, what happened in this old one? Did anything get done? Were any trees removed? Were any kind of a gravel driveway put in? Those are the things that procedurally I'm looking at, and I'm having some questions about. The other thing I noticed, Chuck, on the Baxter and I plan of 10/26/2018, there is absolutely no reference to the deck that's down the side of the pump house. It's not drawn on the plan of 2018, nor is the extra footer that goes down into the water, nor are any of those steps that go up the bank and the existing steps. They're not on that 2018 plan. And I don't know why they're not. If they're pre-existing and they're all rotted, I got to believe they didn't just rot out from 2018 to now. So there's a discrepancy between the plan that is being referred to for this proposal and what I'm seeing on this plan as pre-existing. It doesn't match. I also looked at the assessor's record card, and there's no reference to a deck. There's a reference to the deck on the house, but there's no reference to a deck down by the water. So I'm kind of at a loss as to where did that all come from? Was it there and just overlooked? I don't know. But my question is this: if it wasn't there, then this is all new. It's not rebuilding a legally pre-existed structure. It wasn't there. So maybe we're entitled to some more mitigation or some more issues, because this deck is sitting right there on the edge of the water, and I don't see any record that it even existed as early as 2018.
Yeah, I can't tell you exactly when that was constructed at all. Obviously, it's not showing up here on the Baxter and I plan. The pump house is. I mean, do you agree?
Right, I saw the pump house, but I didn't see all the rest of this stuff.
The deck looks pretty old compared to these photographs, and even those steps are shown
Yeah.
in the photographs look
But how,
older than
how did
7
they,
years.
how did they miss that in 2018?
I don't know.
Like I was also going to say is that those steps aren't, to my knowledge, those steps aren't on this plan either. But I mean, there's clearly those treads have been there since at least that time. I mean,
Yeah.
just from my observation, I don't know if.
Yeah, the steps could have been overlooked if it was all grown in with vegetation, I get that, but a deck, I don't know how you'd miss that. But I'm kind of I'm concerned about the existing OOC and getting that off of the deed with a request for certificate of compliance. I think that should be taken care of ASAP.
We can do that.
Let me see if there was anything else that I saw that I wanted to mention. Oh, the float, it's not the float, but the pier itself. Each one of these sections is 10 feet, so I get it. I add it all up, it's 70 feet out. Why does it have to go out that far? I mean, typically, I know the concerns from the BSC group that one of the abutters hired said that typically you want to achieve a depth of 3 feet. And you could achieve that depth of 3 feet with only maybe 4 sections or 5. So why is it going out so far?
This is the design that we came up with the client, and that they really wanted to have a little bit longer pier. They'd be using it a lot for fishing. There is a lot more access with bow hunting out that far, he believes. And he does have a tribal hunting card. I don't remember the actual name of it, but he has this hunting right card, and he exercises that a lot. And that his preference was to have a dock that was just a little bit bigger. We didn't think it was that much more than what is on the abutting properties. I actually believe that it's.
I see one here that's listed, existing abutters pier approximate location, but it doesn't give a size. I did do a search on aerial photography. It looks quite similar to the one that's being proposed, but
Correct.
I couldn't count the sections.
I think it's generally this. Here's it goes out maybe 55 or 60 feet. We're in the 60 to 70 range.
Right.
So,
So you're an extra
I
10
mean,
feet
it
or so.
is 10 feet further out.
You know, it
didn't
meets
think it was-
regulation 27. There's no question about that. I was just wondering, why does it have to go out as far as it does, you know? But you've kind of answered my question.
So, to go back to the dry well, if you are really hung up on putting in the dry well, I think that we would be happy to come up with a solution for that and come up with a design for stormwater catch basin in that area, and we're happy to come back with a revised plan showing some mitigation planting for the pier footprint.
Right.
And it appears that's pretty much the issues that you guys have come up with, have had tonight.
Right. Okay, anything else, commissioners? No? from the agents. Dan or Drew?
Yeah, so, I could, regarding the Baxter 9 plan and the platform, or deck associated with the pump house, I would, obviously the agent back then, those did exist. I don't know why Baxter 9 didn't pick up on that. But I can attest that those structures did indeed exist back then on the property. As far as like the conditions for mitigation, you could also make it a condition, they apply for a COC, because that is in our bylaw. You have to close out any open permits, prior to filing for new ones, but it's easy enough to make it a condition. It's a simple process. When I went out there, I didn't see any work take place. I don't know if other commissioners saw the same thing, but I didn't see any evidence of any work that took place under that previous order. So I don't know if you still need a letter from the engineers to attest to that, and that's fine if you want to include that, but I didn't see anything out there. As far as like the mitigation, I would also maybe recommend that some of the mitigation could go on the bank itself, because the bank does contain some invasive species that should be eradicated, and replace with native species, so that for the commissioner's consideration. And no other comments.
Okay, thank you. Dan, is there anything you would like to add?
No, I was giving my comment. If there's anything that can be done about the bank with the invasives.
Your microphone's off.
If there's anything that can be done on the bank with the invasives, it's going to be my comment as well. So other than that, it complies with the performance standards as we have right now. So.
Okay. One other issue that I forgot to mention, in the proposal, originally the plan was to take this out for the winter, and I believe it said it was going to be stored under the deck upland, which would be the deck on the house, but that's fairly damaged. I don't know how you'd be able
We can store it in, outside of the 75-foot buffer, if that's, or in the driveway, if that's
in
amenable
the
to you.
gravel driveway area? Okay.
And we're happy to,
Just,
But
I know in the work scope on the NOI, it said it was going to be under the deck, and then when I saw the deck, I thought, well,
that's fair.
it's not going to fit under there.
Yeah, and I think that we'd be amenable to putting in a condition that no work will be done until the prior order has been closed out, COC request.
Okay. All right. Anything else before I go to the public? Okay, let me ask for questions or comments from the public that's here in the room. Anyone? No? Anyone online that would like to
Yes.
speak?
Yes.
Yes.
Linda Smith, 33 Sturgis Lane, Nevada. And the person that ESC wrote a letter for about a month ago, and I also submitted a letter today. I have some questions, and a lot of it is concerning the Baxter Nye permit, the order of conditions. I would really like to see the tolling schedule for the extensions. I've tried to do it myself, and even though I was in the environmental field for over 30 years, it's hard. It's very difficult to look at those dates. But since they're saying the permit is still in existence, I'd really like to know what the tolling schedule is for those two extensions that the state has granted.
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman, there's no debate over whether those previous orders have expired. They have. The commission recognizes that. So everyone realizes the previous order conditions have expired.
Oh, so we're...
It's not up for debate anymore. They're recognized as expired.
The plan of record indicates that that order expired on March 11th, 2025.
Okay.
So, but that's why I had questioned earlier about getting the certificate of compliance, because that's sitting on the deed somewhere, and it should come
Well,
up.
then what should happen is, there's a driveway there that is not identical to the driveway that Baxter and I had suggested. I live next door. I have probably $150,000 in drainage in my property, and I'm about to do some more things to another slope. Because we get torrential downpours and rain. I am concerned about his gravel driveway. I'm actually shocked that you're not requiring more drainage. Not just a berm, I mean actual drainage for his driveway. I am sorry that it's expensive, but most of us, I'm on the Pond Alliance, and we're really trying to stop the drainage from going into the lake. And it should be, I would hope, I would ask the commission to require significant drainage for their driveway, especially on a really steep section. And if you ever want to come down and see what I've done on my property, I invite you all to come look. Since that driveway is no longer under a permit, he's going to be removing trees. There should be mitigation for that. Our suggestion of making the driveway go sideways to mitigate some of that water that would pour down that driveway straight right into the lake was rebuffed. They chose not to change the picture. I mean, the slope of the driveway, the angle. And they're citing a permit that doesn't exist. So that needs to be permitted. It needs to be permitted with mitigation, and it needs to be permitted with drainage. We have a lot of us are on slopes here, and it's pretty crazy. Those stairs in that deck were there in 2018. I will vouch for that. However, they were not permitted. I watched Mr. Sharp put those stairs in. I bought the house. I bought the butter house in 2008, and that was not permitted. To my knowledge, I never got a notice. And I'm surprised that I understand that he's going to clean the pump house or fix it up, but he is on public water. That was. Cape and Island says everybody else is on public water, but he is on public water. His water line comes down my driveway, and then it goes onto his property. He has shut it off. It hasn't, he has no water there. And I don't know why, it's like sewerage. If your pipe goes there, if you have a sewer pipe there, you have a water pipe, you must connect to that. So I don't know if he's thinking he's going to turn on the pump and all of us, which hasn't been used in years, and get water from there, that he can't do that. He has to connect back to public water. And I think that driveway just needs to be redesigned and relooked at, especially since the trees from 2018 have gotten very large, especially the pines, the cedars. They've grown 10 feet, and they're beautiful. They're beautiful. Not all of them have to be taken out to accommodate a reasonable driveway there. And so, yeah, I guess that there's a lot of comments in the VSC letter that was sent. Again, most of them were ignored, and I'm just very concerned that they keep referencing this driveway as a plan for Baxter Nye, that it's not identical. Show what you're really going to do, but you absolutely, I will really, really request that you have proper drainage put into that driveway. And the other thing is the Mashpee Wakely Pond Alliance is concerned about a 70-foot dock. We don't understand why it has to be that way. You can't hunt off of it because I'm within 500 feet of him. So he can't hunt off of it. He can fish, but he can't hunt. So I don't know. I don't know why it has to be 70 feet. And do we want, since you're allowing it here, do we all of a sudden want to see 70 feet allowed around all of the lake? Because this would set a precedent. My dock is 50 feet. And they took the survey markers for my dock, for the depths. And then they decided, I thought it was 60 feet. I thought in the NOI it said 60 feet, but now it's 70 feet. And that is very far out. It's very far out. So that's, I guess, the bank, I'm glad to hear that if he removes the invasives, because it will just be dirt, you really should ask for a planting plan, please. As you notice, the property is in disrepair and there isn't much done to it. And I'm fearful that if things aren't in writing, that they will just be forgotten and not done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Yes, I'd like to speak also, Mr. Commissioner. Jonathan Small, I'm at 40 Sturgis Lane. I'm not a direct abutter, but I'm a few properties over. I just wanted to support what Linda just said about the length of the dock. I'm disappointed that that got glossed over so quickly. The gentleman, I believe, said that this is a typical length of a dock, and I would challenge that. Linda says her dock is 50. My dock, I think, is 32. I think it's 4 8-foot sections. 70 feet seems terribly excessive. I don't know what the regulations are, but that, you know, I would challenge you to go around the lake and find something else that's 70 feet long. I don't think there is anything. If there are, it's few and far between. Most docks are significantly shorter than that, so I think it would set a bad precedent, and I think it would disturb the, you know, the environment, or at least the setting in that place. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Could you come up to the table, and if we can have your name for the record?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jennifer Roberts, and I'm a resident of West Barnstable. I'm a former, now retired lawyer, and I represented Mr. Sharp in litigation with Ms. Smith, which I think ended in 2018. So there is a history there between the neighbors, and I assume that this is going to get kicked over for another meeting based on the conversation I'm hearing tonight. And I'd like the opportunity to provide Chuck or the commission with some details from the settlement of that litigation, because it's been 6 years now. I don't remember all the details, but my memory is that there was an agreement with Ms. Smith and her husband as to the location of the driveway. So it was a little bit surprising to me to hear her concerns tonight. But as I say, it's been 6 years or so, so I want to go back and relook at that record and make sure that that whether that's the case or not, so that you all are informed of that. And I don't
That was
have
218?
That it was, yes, 218 was when it was settled, after a trial, by the way. So it's been a fairly hotly litigated between Ms. Smith and her now deceased husband and Mr. Sharp.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
I would like to speak again on that. Yes.
Hold on.
Am I allowed to do that?
I want to find out if I have anyone else first that needs to speak. No one else? Okay, just briefly, if you could.
Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Sharp and I and my husband, my late husband, were in, as well as his mother, Marlene Perry. We did have a lawsuit against him. He had one against us. However, it was a land court suit. It was concerning easements and rights on property. And that's what it was about. It was about him. I don't want to get into any great degree, but he was, putting property on my property, and I had to hire a surveyor, and then the police were involved, and harassment prevention orders were granted, and it got ugly. It got very ugly. However, I will say this: Mr. Sharp is entitled to have that dock, and I talked to Drew about this. I have never, ever said to anybody that he wasn't entitled to have a dock. He is entitled to have a dock. However, just like every one of us, we did so much mitigation that was required and some extra, he should be held to the same standard. I don't care if it's just a dock and stairway. That's all that I'm asking. He is allowed to have this dock. I'm making comments really more for drainage and mitigation than I am against him. I've never said he shouldn't have his dock. So yes, that's true. We did have that, and I did have litigation with him.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So I'm going to turn back to commissioners. Do you feel comfortable in making a motion, or would you like to see more information about drainage or?
Yeah, I'd like to see more information, have the plan updated for landscaping, the berm, dry well drainage, invasive species, whole thing, and then get, more information on, for the driveway. So,
Okay.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was a bit confused. I thought, given the language, we were voting to implement something that had already been approved, but the permit has expired, so then did the approval. And so there's an opportunity to reevaluate. And it's a really interesting site. I think there's a lot of opportunity there to do things in a better way. I would also like to see the abutters letters. I just searched through everything and I didn't have them either printed or, so maybe we could see those in addition to the revised plans?
One of them just came in like 2 hours before the meeting, but the other one, the BSC, that
I
was
didn't
sent out.
I didn't see that in
It was
here
sent out
either.
back in February.
Yeah, I sent that in February. It was not a PDF. It was just an attached like email.
February.
Yeah, I can resend it. That's not a
That'd
problem.
be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
Thanks,
Would
Dan.
you resend it to me as well?
There were about 10 different concerns that were listed, and that's why I was asking about the COC. That was one of them.
Sure,
Clean up the paperwork,
sure.
which we would have asked for anyways. But as you all know, the continuance request has to come from the applicant
Correct.
or the owners, so it seems to me that's where the commission would like to head with this, to get more information. Do you want to
So-
talk with the owners first, or?
No, I think,
Are you
I feel comfortable that I'd rather ask for a continuance than get denied. But I just want clarification that you guys are looking for drainage and a berm for the driveway, as well as mitigation for the proposed pier. And then my only comment with the invasive species removal is we're happy to go in there and selectively prune invasive species, but I'd rather not under this filing get into a full buffer restoration of, removing root systems, putting in netting. Usually that's a different filing, so I just wanted to make sure that that's what we're talking about, as well as some mitigation planting, but I just wanted some clarification as to direction from you guys, what you're looking for.
Okay. Alex, do you have a set figure that you have in mind for the total amount? You mentioned 2-to-1 ratio.
Math is not my thing, full disclosure. My husband will tell you, but it is 2-to-1, the way I read it,
Okay.
for everything within the 75, and then
Right.
everything in the outer buffer, I don't know what that is, but
Okay. So within the 0 to 75, it would be 2-to-1.
right?
And then outside of that, it
1-to-1.
drops down based on the chart and Regulation 12.
Right.
But you have all of that. You
I
can-
do have all that.
And you are good with math.
I happen to be good at math.
Perfect. I just want to make sure that when you come back, you've got the right amount.
That's why I want the clarification.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, could I?
thing for when we get to Sarah's piece.
Yeah, we're still in deliberating this whole continuance thing, so go ahead, Marjorie.
I just want to ask Steve, should we include, regarding the length of the pier, should we include some request or a motion that be part of the issue? I mean, I honestly don't know the current average of the neighbors in that area. But 70 feet is pretty extensive. And I wonder if, to avoid any sort of problem next time around, if you would consider redoing that, redrawing it for your next application. It does seem, I hadn't thought of it, so I appreciate the abutters' testimony that.
And correct
That's a
me if
long
I'm
pier.
wrong, she said hers was 50? Was it 50?
She said hers was 50, but one of the other, Mr., I
Small.
appreciate, Mr. Small
He said his was 32.
about 35, 32, 35?
Yeah, something like that.
32, I believe it is.
Well, if Mr. Sharp wants a 70-foot pier, maybe just a little more information on the context and how it's justified, and also, shortening the pier could be a way to offset some of the costs
Right.
from the additional drainage fixtures, because I understand not everybody's made of money, but maybe we could hear, I would like to hear a little more from Mr. Sharp about
Why he
the
wants the
length of
70?
the pier and how it would be beneficial to his use of the property.
Well, didn't you say, Paul, that it met all requirements?
It meets the requirements of Regulation 27.
Okay, so.
But it's still, the commissioners have the discretion for a cumulative effect of the dock itself. If they see the length as being excessive, they may have an issue with it. And it sounds like
What does regulation 27
words
say?
in people's
Yeah,
mouths.
but the regulation doesn't
200 square feet, I
limit
think.
the length. does it?
The floats to
No,
be
it does
200
not.
square feet.
I'm sorry?
It
Floats
limits
have to
the
be
size of the
200 square
float to
feet,
200
and the
square
docks have to
feet.
be 4 feet
Right.
wide. There's no
Doesn't deal with the
stipulation on length.
of the,
It
There's
com-
no stipulation.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
I'm sorry, Steve, I didn't hear what you just said.
That's right. No, I'm just asking a question about the regulation doesn't limit the length of the pier.
Right.
All right, so I guess you could go into the records on Mashpee Wakeby and say, okay, what are the length of all the permitted piers?
What's the longest one?
Yeah,
Sure.
and say, okay, what's the average of them all? And
Yeah.
look at it and then make a determination at that point. Okay, if one is 32, one's 50, it's 160, and say, okay, the average is 50, okay, well, let's bring it back to 50 feet, and you're in with the average with everybody else on that side of the lake.
There's also.
And it's a fair decision, it's not arbitrary or capricious that way.
Right.
Kind of.
Fairness
You can
isn't
make-
like our
Kind
purview,
of though,
right?
because you can make numbers look like whatever you want. That's what I do know about numbers. I would say whatever the other longest one is, that we can certainly approve up to what we've approved in the past. If someone else has had a 60-foot pier,
Sure.
60 feet is reasonable to approve for somebody else, as long as the mitigation and everything else checks out. I don't want to like.
No, but haven't we or our predecessors made decisions depending upon new construction, new piers, whatever, in terms of how it encroaches upon the open water?
Right.
And so when you have 25 years ago, they weren't quite as tight on caring about what the neighbors said or the abutters said. But now we do, in terms of what's open and what's available.
Right.
And like I say, I confess to ignorance on what the largest one is. I don't know in that area, but I'd like to find out before you come back for your next hearing.
How would you even go about, like, whose responsibility is it to go out and find every single dock on that lake and then finding the average of it? Who?
Wouldn't it be the harbor masters? I mean, if it has to do with navigation, wouldn't it?
It's not so much the,
He didn't object
it's
to
not
it.
so much identifying what the longest dock is in the lake itself, in the pond, but in our discussions, the engineer is hearing that there's a concern of perhaps maybe we could come back with a little bit of a shorter dock, or let's hear a little more about why it needs to be 70.
I think that would be the best solution.
You know, that.
I'll talk to my client and see if we can come up with it.
That'd be good.
Right,
From you
it's,
people.
it's the impact on the resource area. That's what we're here to talk about. So how does a 70-foot pier impact the land under ocean? And then what capacity is there to mitigate that upland, if any?
Report
Right,
back,
so
we might
it-
get 4 posts out of the ground, and, you know,
That's our
a good
purview,
thing.
right. If we have a sign-off from NESHAP and MESA saying that there's no impact with the project as proposed, I think we do need to take that into consideration. But if it is a concern, I think we have due diligence to conduct in service to the concerns from the abutters. But really, the purview for us, correct me if I'm wrong here, would be the impact to the land under ocean from the length of the
Underwater.
pier?
And underwater.
No ocean here, but underwater.
It's fresh.
Sorry.
Under ocean, land underwater,
Okay.
yeah.
And are we sure that the NISA is tied to this plan and not the previous plan that is now expired?
Yeah, it's this
Okay,
plan because
so-
it's dated.
Okay, so we're.
A couple months ago, I think,
Yeah,
no?
no, it is, 'cause
Okay.
it states Cape and
Okay.
Islands plan, but.
Okay.
Okay, very good. So, Chuck, I'm hearing that you would like to request to continue.
We'd like to request to continue.
Okay. And that would be to...
So we're looking at April 24th, May 8th, or even later.
It's the one after that.
May 22nd.
Things like that fascinating.
Let's do, and you want to plan a week before?
3.5 feet depth, which is
Uh,
20 feet.
Yeah, it's that Thursday prior.
So, yeah, we can do April 24th.
All right, so
April 24th.
April 24th it is.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you, Alex. So motion made by Steve for the continuance, and Alex has the second on that. Any further questions or deliberations from commissioners before I call for a vote? We're all set? Chuck, you're all set with what you know you're coming back with? So let me do a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Cindy? Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is the first time we've had all 7 commissioners here.
In a room.
Yeah.
Actually, in here voting.
Wow.
Very exciting.
Okay. Just give me a minute here to clear off some
It's not a sign of something, is it?
That we're gonna take extra long. I don't know.
Moving on. Our next hearing is 42 Nick Trail, Paul F. and Jean J. Hanley. This is a proposed raise of an existing single-family dwelling, construction
Thank you.
and maintenance of a new single-family dwelling, deck, hardscaping, landscaping, appurtenances, and a Title V IA septic system upgrade. The representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. This is a notice of intent to EP file number 433336. Good evening, sir. If we can have your name for the record, we can begin.
Good evening, Mark Dibb with Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant for 42 Nick Trail in Mashpee. We filed a notice of intent to raise and replace the existing dwelling on the parcel. The existing site consists of a single-family home situated at the northwest corner of the intersection of Nick Trail, which is on the bottom side of the plan, in Pierce Road. The entire property is situated in an AE12 flood zone. The property consists of a existing single-story dwelling of approximately 917 square feet, with the first floor elevation at about 10.7, which is currently below the 100-year flood elevation, and also has an existing basement it's a relatively low ceiling basement. You have to duck under ducts and stuff, but it does have an existing crawl space / basement. And this site has an existing 2-bedroom leach field on the left side there that pumps up to a D-box and a leach field, which that was installed in approximately 2007. The proposal is to demolish the existing house and build a new flood code compliant house situated in essentially the same location as the existing house. Dan, if you wouldn't mind sliding that over to.
Absolutely.
The new house will be partially built on column or pile supported. So you'll see on the plan itself, on the left side of the house, there's 2 heavy dashed lines in the middle of the house, and it says on piles. Similar to the existing deck and the existing addition on that left side, the new house will also be on piles. The primary reason is that we plan to continue to use the existing soil absorption system, and we need to be 20 feet away from that with any kind of new crawl space or foundation. The remainder of the house, which is approximately 24 by 30 or 720 square feet, will be built on a foundation that will have the required flood vents on at least 2 sides, and it'll have a slab no lower than the lowest adjacent grade, which is approximately elevation 9.2. There's proposed dry wells for roof runoff collection, an existing paved driveway. The driveway onto Nick Trail is an existing paved driveway that will be replaced with a porous stone driveway. And the remaining site remaining site areas will be landscaped with native shrubs and grasses, with lawn areas reduced from 4,069 square feet down to 2,418 square feet. We did submit 2 waiver requests for this project. One being the Reg 25C7 setbacks. The entire property's in the flood zone, so it's required to have that waiver from the setback to a wetland, or in this case, land subject to coastal storm flowage. And the second request, we did request to be allowed to have 19% lawn area instead of 10%. This request was to allow minimal paths. Basically, the brighter green on the plan is the lawn area of disturbed lawn area that would have to meet the requirement of your bylaw, and just to create a small access around all the sides, as well as to allow lawn over the tanks, the septic tank and pump chamber. We are requesting that. We provided the nitrogen loading calcs to show that even with that additional 9% lawn, there's a pretty significant reduction of nitrogen with the new IA system that I hadn't mentioned yet, but the project is getting a new IA septic system added. There is no increase in bedrooms for the property, so we do feel that it could meet that waiver request, because the wetland values, in this case the flood zone, by creating a flood compliant home, reducing impervious areas, having about 40% of the house on piles to allow floodwaters to freely flow under, and overall reduce nitrogen loading. We are requesting that waiver, just to be able to, again, provide those brighter green areas going around the property. That is my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
What was the second waiver?
To allow 19% lawn instead of 10%.
Okay.
Of the altered or I forget the exact wording.
Yeah, it's regulation 31.
31.
Yeah.
Oh, 30, okay.
Okay. All set, Mark?
Yes.
All right. So I'll go to commissioners that have questions or comments first. Marjorie's already jumped me the gun on that, but
Yeah, I
that's
did,
okay.
because I'm
So it's
rude,
Reg
but-
31.
But he
I'll
had
come
the
back
right-
to you, though.
He had the right answer.
I'll come back to you. Questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Sandy.
Mark, this little straight line that looks like, is it a retaining wall that's on the right-hand side?
Oh, is it the
See,
limit of work?
yeah, right there.
Or the retaining?
I don't know.
A retaining wall?
That is just the limit of work,
Okay.
silt fence,
Didn't have an
erosion
arrow
control.
that I saw anyway. Okay.
That wasn't in the legend for the.
Okay, yeah, those are supposed to represent hay bales, but
Okay.
that's what that is.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, and there are 2 trees to be removed? Is that correct?
There are 2 just above, right where the cursor is. If you visited the site, those are large oaks that the branches overhang the existing house, so they would be in the way of the proposed house. We are proposing to remove those.
They couldn't be just trimmed?
Um,
I know I have big oaks over my house and I trim them. Yeah. I have-
basically, they would have to be trimmed right up the whole westerly, whichever way is north, the left side on this plan, right up the whole way. I think they would prefer to, we hadn't proposed 2 new trees, but I think they'd prefer to propose 2 additional trees as a condition, if the board would be amenable to that.
Where would they go? Not my question. Okay, Sandy?
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, just,
Rich?
not a question, just comment. I think project definitely leaves the property in better condition than it currently sits there, so.
Okay. That's it, Rich?
Yes.
Okay. Someone else?
I have a question.
Alex?
Are the, on the, fully the left side of the property,
The west side.
the west side, the row of like hedges there, I don't know if they're arborvitaes or what, but are those gonna stay?
Correct, yes.
Because it looks like the way the septic is going in, that it'll definitely be cutting into them.
So what that is the IA system has a blower. It'll be a small trench just to get the blower up near the shed. You know, there would be a little disturbance from that, but the actual leach field is that there's a dashed rectangle there. I don't know if you can kind of, you know, so yes, you know, there's a small trench to get a 4-inch PVC vent pipe in there.
Okay.
But we would hope that the hedges could remain.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that.
Yep. So Mark, how are you going to protect those trees when digging in for the pump chamber and that whole system? How do you protect the roots?
We, again, the line that, you know, on the surface, we'd establish erosion control, or, you know, the work limit shown there. Other than that, we were replacing, I don't know if you can see it, the existing pump chamber. If you zoom in, you can see there's a S and a circle. You know, we're almost in the footprint of the existing pump chamber, but right now it's a dual compartment. So the first compartment acts like the septic tank, and the second compartment acts like a pump chamber. And in order to fit the IA system in there, we have to take that tank out and put in the IA tank, which is now going up and down and then the round circle is a pump chamber. So I mean, it's basically almost, with the exception you can see it overlaps about 2 feet in the same location. So other than, you know, just the new tank will pretty much go into the excavation of the old tank. We're not proposing anything further on that.
The patio, is that going to be a pervious patio?
We didn't specifically say it is. If that's a condition, it could be. I mean, even we're still at a pretty significant reduction of impervious area to trade the existing driveway for that patio. But if that's a condition, we could handle that.
Okay. And then there'd be a Client BF for replacing the trees that be removed with new trees, right?
We could propose to replace 2 trees.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Some questions.
Yes,
Just
Sarah,
a couple
go ahead.
that haven't already been covered. Hi, Mark.
Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, maybe just to start with a comment, I think given the age and the size of those trees, my preference would be 2-to-1 replacement. If we allow those trees to be taken out, especially if there's no threat or they're not interfering with the septic. So just a comment. And I wanted to see, I see in our agent's notes here that there's upgraded stormwater runoff capture and treatment, but I don't see that on the plan. Could you walk me through what the plan is for stormwater for the lot after you all are finished?
Right now, it is the roof drainage. So half the house will be captured in the infiltration system just above the word Lot 1. And then the other half of the house will be captured behind in infiltration systems. Other than that, it's the reduction of the changing the driveway into a gravel driveway. There's no other specific stormwater runoff management, which is still a significant improvement over the existing dwelling.
Okay. And what's the plan for that little paved area in the front of the lot? Is that just going to remain, or are you
It-
going to extend the stone
Do you mean,
driveway?
that is currently paved. I think we were proposing to have it remain, but turn it into stone.
So just break it up into
yeah,
permeable
yeah,
something?
yeah.
Okay. And
Broken up now.
another radical question, Mark. This house, in contrast to the last one we saw, has been very well maintained. It's in great shape. Have you explored alternatives just to lift it up a couple of feet to make it flood zone compliant and reduce the disturbance on the lot rather than tearing up this entire lot to make it flood zone compliant? I assume that's the compelling need for the raise and replace. Is that right?
That's an architectural question. There's probably a number of other building code issues, there's going to be a mechanical room on the second floor of the new house. You know, all the utilities have to go up. Everything has to change. And with the expense of that, to add the second floor is invaluable to the project. So,
It wasn't clear to me that we were adding a second floor. So what's the increase of the interior space that we're
essentially double.
doubling the interior space? Okay. Good to know. The other thing that I noted on the plan and just taking a look at Regulation 31, I would consider the additional lawn to be a problem, but vegetation is not. You know, this lot is about, 5 or 6 lots down from the water. And when I was there, it looks like the slope of it, everything's actually going to just run into the street and into the property across the street. That was where all the water would go if things are flowing in and going down. So I wonder, the extra lawn would be a problem for me, but plantings would not be. And I think there are some opportunities where that small paved area is in the front. And then I think Drew had mentioned also that secondary driveway in the back could be converted into a mitigation planting area just to capture some water in exchange for basically doubling the size of this teeny little cottage that's in the floodplain. So those were just some of the things that I flagged while I was out there. But the lot is in good shape. The house looks like it's in good shape. The only concern that I see really is that we're about 1.5 feet or maybe less than 1.5 feet under current base flood elevation. So we're looking at a proposal to blow up an entire lot to get it up 1.5 feet. So
But the square footage is doubling, but the actual footprint is the same, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
no, it's a little bigger.
It's bigger.
Yeah, it's bigger on the plan. It's about 300 square feet bigger, it looks like. Right.
317.
There it is.
Yeah.
She's got her math back.
Yay. Could I just have a follow-up question? You had mentioned it's going to remain 2 bedrooms, regardless of the increase in square footage. And the septic allows for how many baths?
2 bedrooms.
2 bedrooms, but how many baths?
Baths is not a criteria for sizing bedroom, or for sizing Title V systems.
It's always
So
bedrooms.
you don't want to answer my question?
You can have 50 bathrooms.
But how many do you have?
When I can afford it, I'm going to build a 50-bathroom house and
Yeah,
have
it's-
2 bedrooms.
It'd be for
You don't
4
have a floor plan that has...
permitted for
It's not our
Yeah,
purview.
it's,
I know,
it's,
but it might be someday.
Well, you have to wait for the someday.
It's not.
So we are allowed to ask how many bathrooms
Yeah,
it will
we're
have.
allowed to ask anything.
I
can-
just think it's pertinent, and I think
groundwater
that it's a little
protection.
impertinent to say, well, you don't have to know,
I have architecturals
just
with
so
me.
that you know.
There is 3 bathrooms.
3 vaults, and that's it.
Looks like they're all full, yes.
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Other questions? Mark, I have one question on the septic system itself. It's microfast, correct?
Correct.
Do you know the maintenance schedule on that? Is it annual or?
The maintenance
The
schedule?
maintenance schedule. All of these IA systems, when they go to the Board of Health, there has to be a maintenance plan. And I was just wondering what this one requires.
I believe it's every 6 months.
Every 6?
But there is every one of these has a DEP transmittal approval letter, and it'll be monitored. There's monitoring and maintenance. The 6 months could be the monitoring, and maintenance could be 12 months. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head, but we will. The schedule required for the system will be followed.
Okay. So what's running through my mind, the reason I ask is we're obviously getting more and more of these coming in all the time. Whose responsibility is it to ensure that the maintenance is conducted in an appropriate fashion? Does that fall on the Board of Health here at the town of Mashpee, or does that fall on the owner? Does it fall on you? Who does it fall on? Because we got a lot of these going in the ground. I'm wondering who's going to be keeping an eye on all the maintenance.
Owners sign an O&M agreement with the wastewater treatment companies before these are put in the ground.
Right.
So it's on the owner. But they're required to sign that agreement, so
Sure.
that wastewater company will come out and do the required inspections because they've signed an agreement to do so.
That paperwork is submitted here to Town Hall?
Correct.
Okay. I was just curious, because I know every time we meet, there's 1 or 2 of these going in the ground. I'm thinking, who's keeping an eye on all of these? Because we certainly don't. But I'm concerned about groundwater and making sure that that maintenance is done on an appropriate schedule. So, thanks. I have no further questions. Any other questions from commissioners before I go to agents? You guys have something? Okay. Dan or Drew, if there's something you would like to add?
No, not much to add. Just to confirm that, the interior living space really, isn't the purview of the commission. Obviously, number of bedrooms ties into septic, and that is purview for groundwater. But as far as the interior space and configuration of rooms, that's not really the purview of the commission. But no other comments. Thank you.
Okay. Dan, anything you'd like to?
All I have to say is that you are asking for a waiver from Regulation 31 for 19% for lawn, and it doesn't seem that you're offering really any on-site mitigation in the form of plantings. And you also want to remove 2 trees. So if there was a possibility to reduce that lawn footprint down to say 15%, still being over the 10%, I understand that. Say just connecting this here or whatnot, just to add to the 2-to-1 mitigation, because it does sound like the majority of the commission is in favor of that, having some sort of mitigation for those tree removals. So just reducing the lawn for that, still getting the waiver if that's appropriate, and having on-site mitigation, I think would make this application stronger too. That's it from me.
I just want to clarify. It's like taking down trees and replacing them. It's not mitigating for the building of the house. It's mitigating for taking down trees and just replacing trees.
Yes,
There's
yes.
2 completely different things that I think, would be asking for. I think it would be reducing the lawn, perhaps taking out that whole bottom right corner of lawn, placing 2 trees, and then plantings additionally because of the increase in square footage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all for the waiver request is really what it comes down to. I just say that because there's an option when it comes to the bottom right of the property, the top right for the parking area. You have, it seems like the client has options for a mitigation area. So that's all.
We also want to require a micro clover for the lawn area.
Yeah, if, we always recommend that micro clover for any conditions that are going for the lawn. So we always recommend.
All set? I would ask the public, but there's no public here. Anybody online that? Think so? Okay. I would accept a motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, make a motion for closing issue for 42 Nick Trail with the following conditions, that the trees on the west side be protected, and if the die-off occurs, to be replaced in kind. Applicant can coordinate with staff on that. The removal of 2 trees needs to have new trees replaced. 2-to-1 mitigation, Dan, is that what you mentioned?
Yeah, it should be 2-to-1, the flood
2 to
zone.
1,
Yeah.
okay. The patio be pervious. All lawn be microclover to meet the requirements. And then if we can reduce the amount of lawn to lower the number from 19%, you said that closer to 10%, Dan?
Well, I was just thinking if it could be like a 15%. 10% is our limit. So they're asking for a waiver above 10%. So I would think anything below 19, you know, in my mind between 15 and lower would be great. You know,
Between 10 and 15?
yeah, because if he's going to do a 2-to-1 mitigation for the trees, then he's going to need some areas because they're going to go in as, you know, 4-footers, 5-footers, 1-inch, 1.5-inch caliper, and they're going to grow fairly quick and take up space.
Yeah.
So that's why I was considering
Okay,
it.
so if we can reduce the lawn area down between 10 and 15%. Yep,
15.
yeah, and have planting mitigation in its place, so. That's it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Motion made and seconded, up for discussion amongst commissioners only.
I just
Yes.
don't want to see where the trees get taken out to just become lawn.
Right.
And then, I don't know. It's hard doing it on hypotheticals, so I guess.
Do you care where the lawn is or where the trees go in, or is it, if it's a reduction of lawn, which would be how much lawn's going in, and the 2-to-1 for the trees, do you care where they go?
I mean, it's the limit of work, but outside of that, I think I would be okay with like that area being filled as a buffer. So not just 4 trees, but other plantings dispersed in between that would do well in shade once the trees grow up. I would like it further away from the house so they're not just whacking at it in 5-10 years when it grows up.
I'm not challenging,
I know.
Alex, I'm just
Yeah.
asking so that, or, you know,
Yeah.
they'll understand what they want.
Yeah, it's totally fair. Is that? Do other
And the
people agree
way
with that?
insurance goes, nobody's putting their trees close to their houses
No.
these days
No.
because
Sure.
you're gonna be told.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much square footage that bottom area is, but
It's not a lot.
It's hard to imagine that looking at this layout because this was for 19% lawn. So a lot of this green is going to shrink, but we're not sure where it's shrinking, right?
Right.
Do you want to require that that driveway up there in the top right-hand corner be used for the mitigation? Specifically lay that out?
I don't.
You feel more comfortable doing it that way?
I mean,
I'm just asking.
yeah, I don't. Is this, I mean, I guess it's our discussion, but
Right.
it's a currently existing gravel drive in that top corner? In the pictures, it looked just like a little bit of, it looked like grassy too.
Yeah, it's probably one of those cottagey driveways that hasn't been really,
It's right here in the corner of the photo, right there.
Gravelly type of thing, yeah.
It has weeds grown into it, but it is gravel.
I mean, I actually think they do need a place to park, and I don't really care about the 2 driveways. I would rather have like plantings next to each other and it makes sense.
Yeah, if you remove a lot of that lawn area in the front and on the side, all planted, just have like a,
Right.
you know, L-shaped.
Keep it away from the
plantings,
water, the
yeah.
gas, the septic.
Yeah, how about planters along the front?
What, is that a 10-inch tree that's in the middle of that low area?
No, I think that's 10-foot elevation.
18-inch and a 20-inch tree.
but the 2 oaks that are coming out are the 2 oaks that are really close together, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
it's
then there's the
10-foot
big
elevation.
oak, there's another big oak
By the
by
corner.
the corner,
Yeah.
right?
That one, it looks like that whole area is untouched. Yeah. You know, as pertains to what we have on the table, I think I just want to state for the record that I really take issue with applicant after applicant after applicant coming in with the compelling need of adhering to flood zone compliance and us permitting these complete blowouts of lots that have been intact, non-conforming be it, but intact for sometimes decades, and doubling the size of these houses.
That's not in our purview, though.
What did you just say?
Not in our purview.
I
so.
mean,
so
that's what,
tired of
that's
that
what
phrase.
Drew
It's not-
says, but I would
it's true.
respectfully disagree. I
It's
do
only a
think it's within our
317
purview.
square foot increase. in-
It's, you know,
Footprint, but-
death by 1,000 paper cuts, Steve. I think, you know, we're looking at cumulative impact here, we're looking at impervious surfaces, and then we're looking at, you know, the number and the volume of people that can now use this property, and what that is, you know, doing at the expense of, and especially when it accompanies a waiver request, I just do not feel that this degree of renovation meets compelling need for bringing this existing structure to flood zone compliance. So I do take issue with this, on this project and with others, because we just are seeing it over and over again. And it's a lot of money to blow these houses up, and when we're asking about what alternatives have been explored to minimize disturbance on the lot, and what we're hearing is that it's cost prohibitive, I don't buy it. So just for the record, this is just one commissioner's opinion, but I would be inclined not to grant the waiver request in the flood zone for the project as presented.
So regulation 25 you're talking now?
The setbacks and the lawn, you know, you know, but
So do you have an
But it-
issue with now they're, I guess, whatever, doubling the square footage of the house? So would you have an issue if they're increasing the foundation by 390 square feet, but it maintained it as a ranch? Would that change your opinion? Or are
Well-
you concerned with the
no,
square
I
foot?
understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand why the house has to be bigger. Why can't we just keep it the same size
'Cause
and bring it to flood zone
I
compliance?
think it's,
Have you ever seen a house be
person's-
lifted up, though? I mean, it's pretty.
Yeah, we
it's
had
a-
one in here a couple weeks
But there is,
ago.
I mean, there's a lot of disturbance that goes on to raise a house.
It's less than what's going to happen here. And construction, who knows how long this is going to take? We're talking about, it could go through the winter, we're talking about the rainy season. There's just so many opportunities to disturb this lot and to increase adverse impacts to the adjacent properties. You know, this is a practice that I take issue with.
and then I'm not sure,
for the
maybe
record.
Steve can answer this, but if you go over 50%, you have to bring the rest of it up to code, correct?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
By
if
building
you're-
code and FEMA, you know. You're
Sure, does that mean tear it
regulated.
down and build back a house twice as big?
But if you look at the positives, you take in a non-flood zone house, you make it a flood zone compliant, so it's meeting all the requirements for the building code, for FEMA, for the
What
town
does
of
that have to
Mashpee
do with the
requirement.
resource area, though? I understand the compliance with the
It's-
building
it-
codes,
it's-
but for the resource
But
area,
that's
this is
what
not
the-
an improvement to the lot. This is
That's
a
what the
giant
conditions are.
disturbance.
With
So
conditions,
Sarah,
we're
would
asking
you-
for,
Oh, sorry.
conditions, they ask for a waiver for 19%, we're asking down under 15% for lawn area. Asking for 2-to-1 planting mitigation. You got a flood zone compliant house, you have a IA system that's helping out with nitrogen loading. So it's all these positive things, and.
I
and
don't
then
agree as a-
regardless whether it's going to 2 stories, it's not in our purview.
So
It's
I'm
like
gonna-
gain
I would disagree,
317
and as a conservationist, I
309
don't
square
agree that
feet.
the disturbance introduced to this lot is made up for by what you just listed.
Is the disturbance to this lot better than keeping what's there infinitum?
No.
It's only
So,
temporary.
so
it's
you,
only
so you're
temporary
saying the current house
Sure.
is detrimental to the resource area?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, so
No, I'm
that's why I
saying
was
we
asking
could-
you, because,
We could leave it, I mean, if the concern is flood zone compliance, we bump the
so
house up.
I think what you might
We
run
modify
into
the
here
house.
is you tell, if you put out those requirements, and the owner said, fine, I'm not gonna do anything, because it's not gonna, this house now is not fit for purpose for what I want. I'll just leave it as this cottage, and I won't do anything to it. Are we happier with that than them putting in the new IAG system, flood components, the mitigation plantings, and basically turning this lot that has been, kind of not thought about for the environment since probably 1956 when it went in. And
There's
that- I
nothing
think-
wrong with the lot, though. The way it is, it's the health and safety concerns for the seasonal occupants. The folks here don't live here right now, these current owners. But I don't think that the cumulative impact of blowing up all these lots in the floodplain is worth the small gains we're getting in nitrogen reductions. I think there are a lot of alternatives that could be pursued that have not been under the guise of cost prohibitants, right? There's just a lot more that could be done to thoughtfully introduce plans that are taking into consideration the resource area and less so financial gain. So anyway, I understand we need to move on.
Yeah.
But this is
I
just
was just going to call for other topics in our deliberations. If there are some, or if there aren't, I'll call for a vote. Anything else?
No.
Just in the interest of time.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Sarah?
No.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote no. But the motion carries 4 to 5 to 2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night, Mark.
See the ruckus off the record that you caused here tonight, Mark?
No, it's the
Well,
right discussion.
it's not a ruckus. I think when we have the luxury of a little bit of time, I think it's healthy for the commission to, in their deliberations, state their reasons, and Sarah had her reasons. I wanted to hear them as chair. Shauna made some good points. Everybody did, and I think we all learned from each other with that opportunity.
I agree. I was
We have
being
other stuff we have to go on to.
semi-facetious.
Okay. Let me grab that agenda and back up a little bit. That's the last one, right? There are no COCs. We're good on that. Okay. I'm going to move to the approval of the draft minutes. The first one on the list is an old one, November 16th, 2023. Eligible to vote on that would be Steve and Sandy and myself. So I know I've looked them over. I didn't see anything wrong.
Yeah, they look good.
You guys okay with that? So I'd accept a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Motion made and seconded. Nothing else to say on that? I'll call for a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. The next set of minutes, we've been at this one a few times with a lot of different edits, but it looks like it's pretty well squared away. This is for December 12th, 2024. Eligible to vote would be Paul, Steve, Sandy, Marjorie, Sarah, and if need be, Neil and Shauna, because they were here for that.
I think that was our first one.
What do you think?
I'm good
Go
with
with
them. Yeah.
Good?
Yeah?
Looks like you're going to get off the hook finally on these. I know it's gone back to the author a few times. Okay, I would accept the motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Second?
Second.
Thank you, ladies. We'll give that one to
We
Marjorie.
practiced
for the-
that, actually.
Marjorie for the record.
Yep.
Yes.
Any further discussion on those? I'll call for a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So those pass unanimously. Moving down to the discussion items. I'm going to skip over water quality, just for the sake of getting to Regulation 25. I know I sent out Regulation 25 to all the commissioners a few days ago. Sorry for the delay, but there was quite a bit of formatting to do on the question at hand from our last discussion was, well, what about undeveloped lots? Everything that we had in there was for developed lots. What about undeveloped? And we really did need something. So what the bylaw review committee did was we took the figures from the existing Regulation 12, and those were less than 5,000 square feet. There was no requirement at all for any kind of preserving of natural vegetation. And then we looked at all of the percentages and basically upped them all as far as trying to preserve as much natural vegetation as could be perceived. One of the issues that I brought up in subcommittee was somewhere down the line, there could be a lot that somebody decides to subdivide and say, well, I'm going to subdivide this lot, and that whole section over there, I'm going to sell off as an undeveloped lot. But we don't know that to be true, and so it's very difficult to look at the landscape that's out there today and say, okay, let's write a regulation for all that undeveloped land, because what appears to be developed today could actually get subdivided maybe somewhere down the road. So with all of that in mind, we took, just to make some sense out of it, we took the original requirements, which was no requirement for less than 5,000, 10%, 20%, 30%, that's the way it broke down, and we made a 20% requirement for anything less than 5,000 square feet, and then just followed that pattern from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50. So that's where we came up with those particular figures. And somewhere down the road, if something were to be unusual, because these are all divided on a case-by-case basis, the commission reserves the right to change those requirements on an individual lot. And that's not only written into the performance standard 2, it's also the last performance standard, where the commissioners may want to impose extra requirements, and that's on a case-by-case basis. I need to pull my copy up here, so bear with me for a second. Okay.
Paul, do we want to mention that, what we think was a typo with 500?
Yes, I'm going to get to that. I'm going first with the comments. There is a rewording on building and/or structure in the definitions. Call your attention to that. And Drew had put that language in where it says patios and other types of hardscaping are considered to be structures within the context of Mashpee's Chapter 172 Wetland Bylaw and jurisdiction thereof. So that's new, that wasn't there the last time you had looked at it. I agreed with that. If it were in some other area other than land subject to coastal flow, then I'd probably waiver one way or the other, but patios tend to take up compensatory flood storage area, even though it might not technically meet the building code for a structure. Our code is different, and that patio does represent a reduction in the capacity of
good
that
catch.
resource area, so I agreed with that.
So, but what if a patio's pervious?
Well, then,
And if it's
they
flush
could
to
argue
grade.
that. They could argue that.
Right, because saying, if you had a raised patio with retaining walls, I agree with you 100%, but if you
Sure.
had a flush patio,
Yeah.
that's not a
Impervious.
structure. That, and no definition, I haven't seen it in the wetland bylaw, but any building code, FEMA, everything, that's not a structure.
And as I mentioned quickly, if I came before a commission with pervious patio, I would ask the commission to waive that part of the definition. And that would be up to the commission at that point to say, yeah, okay, we get it, it's pervious, it's not a structure.
Right, but then,
So, sorry, just to add in, Steve, just to clarify, I mean, structure is just a word that's chosen, it really boils down to the term alteration. Because a lot of times, homeowners get confused when they see that we have, standards for what's defined as structure in this revised definition, like patios and, things that aren't building code structures, but it really boils down to that they're alterations to the resource area. So maybe structure isn't the right word, but it's kind of built into this definition to educate the public that we have standards for alterations above and beyond what are considered structures by the building code.
okay, yeah, I think it was confusing because, I know what the definition of a structure is for building code, zoning bylaws and all that stuff. And I could see a raised patio with retaining walls, because that would impede flow and that would be structure. But if you have a patio at grade, even, it's not going to impede flow at all. So that's why I'm confused why it's called structure. That should be, maybe a separate line item for hardscaping, for a patio, not underneath structures.
What if
Well, we could like, what is just a suggestion we could do is, keep decks obviously are structures across the board.
Yeah, correct.
And just redefine that part of the definition to note that other types of hardscaping, like, retaining walls that are below the threshold of triggering building code, and patios and other types of hardscaping, fire pits, those sorts of things, are alterations.
So
Because they are.
my
And that's what triggers mitigation,
So my suggestion would be to strike line the word structures and change it to alterations.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Okay.
We're good.
Does that tie, and this is probably a comment throughout the document, but if you go through all, and I'm sorry, I'm still reading through all of 172 because it's a pretty hefty read.
It's a while.
But we have no conflicts in how we describe things in the regs, right? Because the worst thing you can do is put out a performance standard that has something else being said somewhere else in your bylaw.
Right.
Has anybody done that work? Do we know that to be, we're all ticked and tied in the way we describe definitions, performance standards, and things like that? There's no conflicts anyplace else in the regs?
The definitions are not a performance regulation. They just clarify words that are found in those.
So, but they are the exact same words that are in someplace else in the reg?
It may refer to a building or a structure. So somebody would say, well, just exactly what are all the possibilities of a building or a structure? So you go back to the definition and you read what it has to say, and you see that, oh, by the way, the commission will look at a patio, especially if it's impervious, as an alteration to a resource area, which it is.
But, so I have a question with that.
It's kind of a flag that comes up.
It also is under appurtenance, though. Is it needed as under structure also?
Hold on.
So other hardscaped surfaces, pools, patios, retaining walls, fences, garages, those are all considered appurtenances. Do we need to add it to structure also if it's already under appurtenance?
Yes, and the reason for that would be when you get into, say, the AE zones, like an AE 11 or 12,
Yeah.
the performance standards are different than what they would be in a velocity zone or a coastal A. When you get into that velocity zone, these patios, I don't care what they're made out of, they just can't go in. But they could be allowed.
Don't we say, though, like, structures, building structures and appurtenances? Like, the way it's said, wouldn't it already rule it out with it be, or address it with it being under the definition, under appurtenance?
Under appurtenance. Yes, for the velocity zone and perhaps the coastal A.
Right.
But not for the A zone.
So, okay.
So you come back to the A zone, you look at, well, what's allowable and what isn't, and we refer to different structures. You go back to the definition.
And we don't mention appurtenances when we get to the A.
Yes, there is verbiage in there. You'll see that when we, I don't know if you've looked at it or not, but it's in there.
Well, yeah, I just feel like we're like muddying it by just having it in multiple places. I mean, yes, it's
Well, because you
an
have
attempt to be
multiple types
prudent,
of,
but
we have multiple types of flood zones per FEMA regulations, and that was one of the questions we were hit upon earlier. Well, what's the difference between this zone and that zone? You're not differentiating the A zone versus the V zone versus the coastal A zone. So we did our work. We went back and we said, okay, let's break this all out. Let's make sure we've got specific regulations for an AE 11 or 12 or 15. But let's also make sure that we've covered the requirements for the velocity zone and the coastal A. And then along came the building 10th edition, and that reaffirmed everything that we said for velocity and coastal A.
Maybe just a suggestion based on Alex's comment, we could take that hardscaping language and put it under appurtenances. Because it is double mentioned. I totally understand the comments. And that way you'd have clear separation of definitions, one for appurtenances, which would include hardscaping.
right.
And then building and structure, and just leave that part out and just, add in as necessary under appurtenances for examples. I think that makes perfect sense. we're just talking about definitions here, it's, you know.
Right.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I don't think it changes, I don't think leaving it to appurtenances to cover hardscapes then affects velocity AEA. I don't think that then like changes that. I think it's just covering it there.
Yeah, it's just a
Right,
definition,
right. You're
an
right.
example.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to
Yeah.
require, it's not going to change the performance standards.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so Drew, you made a note of that to?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if I were to go through and find a definition of any of these definitions, any place else in the reg, the definitions would be the same.
In our regulations, do you
In
mean,
our
Shauna?
regulations, yeah. So if there is a definition somewhere in any of the regulations, they would be the same as these definitions.
I only think we have definitions in one other place in the whole bylaw, is that
Right,
correct?
Regulation 24 is definitions.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole
Okay, so
regulation.
does 24 then sync up with these definitions, or will we amend 24 to be the same?
You'd probably want to do that second one.
Right, because
Yeah.
that
Things
then
have
gives
changed.
people the ability to
Sure.
play, you know, Peter against Paul. And
Sure.
so that was my question.
Just have to get through
Huh?
25.
The 25, okay. But that's maybe that's housekeeping after the fact, but, yes, but
But it's a good catch.
Okay,
I
so
wrote
let
policy for a
me
living.
continue along. The next change
Good
that
call.
was
Very good.
created since you last looked at this is naturally vegetated areas. And Drew had put in undisturbed for clarification. And my comment was, I'm not sure we need this, so maybe a little bit of further discussion on that word undisturbed. It says, areas of undisturbed indigenous vegetation. The commission may allow areas of mitigation plantings to be considered as naturally vegetated areas if done according to a plan approved by the commission. I'm going to go to Drew first on this because you did put that word in, and I'm not quite sure
What page are we on?
the rationale. Other than-
Yeah, so it's really, you know, when I've looked up, there's several different variations of definitions for that term, naturally vegetated areas. As you can imagine, there's no universal definition.
Right.
So the ones that I researched, I saw that word used, undisturbed, unaltered, you know, pristine, whatever, you know, type of adjective kind of lends itself to a naturally vegetated area. You know, in my view, it's an area that, you know, hasn't been altered by development, whether it be lot by lot or region by region, or whatever scope, you know, scope and scale
So
you want to use. But
I will add
fine
though,
with having it taken out. It's not a big deal. I just, you know, it's just something I saw coming across research for definitions of that term.
the last bylaw review subcommittee meeting I sat on, we took that out because it didn't make sense to have undisturbed, because if an area renaturalized, we would want it to remain that way.
All right.
Yeah, makes sense. We could take
And in
it
this
out.
community, that's
Right.
more often than not what we're gonna, can I also just, can we,
Like that.
what I've seen, what the standard language, and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong here, but wouldn't it be native vegetation and not indigenous
So I looked that up
vegetation?
too. So I looked that up too. It can be used either way, and indigenous typically means more specifically local to that area, whereas native can be like more regionally. So
Right.
As
Yeah.
we're thinking about habitat migrations and climate change, would we be better suited just to
I don't know.
use
because
native
that's-
vegetation? Indigenous vegetation is just, it's niche and it's different than everything I've seen.
It means one thing to
Well, they do mean different, they
It
mean
does,
different
yeah.
things, so.
It can be kind of used. It's super nuanced. I don't know, because I was looking that up this morning
What
too.
what if you just included both, indigenous or native vegetation? That way you're covering both ends of the spectrum.
I think whatever is
Is
indigenous
all
would be
indigenous native and-
Yes, but not all native
Native
might
is,
not
yeah,
be
be
indigenous.
indigenous.
Right.
Let's just go with
Jacuzzi, hot tub.
So just go with or and.
You could go with and or.
Looking fine.
Use them both and go with and
And/or,
Just added 3 more words
that way
to
you're covering
this.
both ends of the spectrum. Because climate change is an issue, and over time,
Native
I don't wanna go
species
back in
change as
25
habitats
again.
change.
yeah.
This
Okay.
could be Cape sea bass
so we're comfortable with putting
pretty soon, so.
and/or native.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay,
Noted.
okay.
Thank you, Drew.
Our next change is found under performance standards. Drew's comment was move this wording to have it directly under performance standards. All efforts must be made to reduce impacts of land subject to coastal storm flowage. This is part 4. Any activity proposed within LSCSF must not adversely impact the critical characteristics and presumptions of significance of this wetland resource area as described in section 2 of this regulation, which is a powerful statement, because what you're doing is you're wrapping critical characteristics and significant presumptions of significance into the performance standards, such as they already are with our regulation 16, I believe it is, for coastal banks. So that's new. And then we get into what I was talking about before I opened my copy, the undeveloped lots. And those are the figures that we have. And while we were looking at that, when we go back and look at the original or the existing Regulation 25, we found a error in that. And the error was that, I'm trying to find the page, there's a 500 square foot figure in the original, hold on, I got it right over here.
Yeah, it's 25C2A.
Right, 25A, yeah. It says, if the commission finds that home construction or construction of accessory structures such as, but not limited to, additions, decks, garages, pools, patios, sheds, or driveways, would alter 500 or more square feet, it would be impossible to create in an undeveloped lot a home in any kind of an appurtenance with 500 square feet. And the rationale with the subcommittee was that there should have been another zero there. It should have been 5,000, such as you would see for riverfront types of situations. That 5,000 foot occurs over and over and over again in the regulations. I think somebody just made a mistake there. And that's something that we should focus on right here and now and make sure that that can be, I don't know, what's the official process of creating that?
So, yeah, what we could do, it's also the threshold for alteration of bordering vegetated wetlands. So, you know, I think based on the conversation we had and its relevance of, you know, and reference of 5,000 square feet throughout the State Wetlands Protection Act and our own bylaws, this was clearly a typo, because you can't possibly develop a lot with a single family home or pertinent septic and everything else in 500 square feet. It's just not possible. So what we would do with the blessing of the commission is we would go in, change the wording, add a zero, create a PDF, upload it to the website to replace the existing PDF of our regulations. It's all one PDF, all regulations under one document. Send out notice to all of our consultants and representatives. We have an email distribution list with most of everybody that we typically see, and then post a notification on our website alerting the public to this change.
So the change in question, just so I understand, is that we are now saying that across the board, the trigger for adverse impacts is no longer 500 square feet, it's 5,000?
It'd be 5,000.
Square
It was
feet?
supposed to say 5,000 because that's how it's reflected in the state act and numerous wetland resource areas as a threshold of alteration. Doesn't mean you have to allow that. It's just a stated threshold.
So why did
Never
it
should
say
have said
500?
500, it should have said 5,000.
It's a mistake.
It was a typo?
It was a typo.
It's been there for
Typo.
years?
Yeah.
It's in there since
Okay.
2007. Now, this is the current 25 that we were working off of.
Sure.
This is not being incorporated into the existing draft of 25. So if and when 25 gets accepted by the commission, goes to public hearings, gets promulgated, and is now the new Reg 25, it's an issue that's off the plate anyways.
So what's the benefit of going through the process to update it when we're already revising the regulation to
Because we've
reflect
been on
that?
this for 2 years, and I'd like to be done with it. The quicker the better.
Because
It should have been done before.
It's misinformation on our regulations, and we need to fix it immediately. It probably won't last much longer because we're working on these revisions, but we can't have misleading information in existing regulations for public transparency.
It's not bringing it up to a different level. It's going back and saying, we made a mistake, then fix it.
Yeah, and we have to do it right away.
Right.
I've been looking at this thing since, well, it's 2 years now. And
Yeah.
we picked up on it at our last meeting. In fact, actually, I think it was mentioned at this meeting, and then we took another look at it when we got the subcommittee. But again, that's for the existing 25, it's not for the new draft that we're looking at. The figures, the figures we'll be using are found in that new chart. Less than 5,000 square feet would be 20% of the lot would have to be retained as natural vegetation.
I had a question on the table. Are we talking about the revisions, or are we taking a vote on this other thing?
We're not voting on this tonight, right?
Yes, we're going through all the
Oh, you want to go through the whole thing?
Yeah.
We've been taking a lot of suggestions from commissioners over and over and over again, and at some point, you know, I'll be perfectly honest, I'm done. I don't really see, I'm sure you could pull 25 out later and look at it and say, you know, this could change, or maybe we
Sure.
can add this. And we do that. Regulations have to get upgraded all the time. We have to upgrade 12, and we just got done with that one a few years ago.
Oh, I'm ready to vote on it. I just didn't know if that was
Can I
your
ask a
intent.
question? I'm just looking for clarification. I'm just trying to understand it. But in performance standard number 2, one of the last sentences, any proposed increase in a building footprints will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So how does an applicant, if he's reading this, look at that and say case-by-case? Say the person wants to do an ADU in a flood zone, and he goes, does he now have to go through the expense of hiring an engineer, an attorney, and everybody else, and then they come in and it's a case-by-case and say, no, you can't do it? Like, I don't think that's fair to the applicant. I mean, it should pertain to the building codes. It shouldn't be a case-by-case, because someone's compelling need could come in here and say they have, and I'm just using as a handicapped child, or they have a child that's coming back, and
Is that me?
or
No.
someone says, I want to build an ADU to rent. Like, so where do you draw the line? How do you determine case by case?
It's the commissioners that would draw the line. They would listen to whatever the case may be. A case in point, several years ago, we had a person come in here that wanted a fairly large pool, and everybody was dead set against it till we found out the reason, that the person was handicapped, and their doctor said they need the water therapy.
Oh, I was still against it.
And it flew right through. So they're all case by case, every one of these. And as far as building standards versus the protection of the resource area, we don't have to worry about a building standard on the expansion of a footprint in a resource area. What we have to worry about is the coverage in that resource area that's about to take place. And then the commissioner says, I can live with that. It's only 300 feet, and, you know, they also propose rain gardens over here and something over there. But if it's in an area where it doesn't look feasible to protect the resource area, the commissioners may say no. Like we had earlier tonight. Some commissioners said, no, I'm not on board with that waiver, and others said, I am. And that's the way they're metered out.
There are other processes that work that way too here in town, where you have to go and you have to pay the money and you have to do the thing to get in front of a committee for them to tell you if something is feasible or not. I mean, there's a precedent here in town for that, so.
I understand that, but it's just,
Yeah.
like I said, it puts a lot on an applicant.
Sure. I mean, we do have some that represent themselves though, you know?
I mean, if you're doing a raise and replace, that person's not representing themselves.
No, that's a bigger project,
And it is,
for
and
sure.
it's an expense.
Sure.
Oh, but the opposite is also true, if I may just jump in
Sure.
here. Case-by-case basis could be a financial burden to have to rise to it and answer questions about A, B, and C. But it could also be a case like a handicapped child, or something that has not ever come before a commission. And so you say, well, you don't qualify for A, B, and C, but I'm the homeowner. And I say, but you know what? I'm a different case. You have to give me a case-by-case consideration. I'm asking for 3 waivers, and I think you'll give them all to me. You know? So I think you can speak to the benefit on both sides. That I was very happy to see those words in there, case-by-case, because it allows for that kind of.
But I guess, but it comes down to is something that's important to me might not be important to the commission. That's
right.
So, like I said, if you have, someone that's divorced, and I mean, you could throw a million scenarios.
That's right. But you can now too.
As pertains to the impact to the resource area, right? Like, it's not our job to say, you can't do that, we don't agree with it. It's our job to say, the impact to the resource area is not compelling to meet the need for a waiver, if that's the case or whatever. Like, we're just looking at the environmental impact.
I understand that, and then I guess
So-
this comment is certainly not in our purview, but I think Alex and I have had this conversation. Hindering any type of building or not allowing people to either raise, replace, or do expansions like this significantly puts a deficit in the town's tax base. And
That is like fallacy.
it's not, so let me say this to you. So
Okay,
you
go
all know
ahead.
where I live.
Yeah.
Okay, so I forget when around COVID, whenever it happened, there was a house, I forget the number. They built, it was a large house.
Mm-hmm.
Once they got occupancy, there was, you should have heard the talk up and down the street. My taxes went up $4,000 because that house came online.
Mm-hmm.
So that house, and if I had time, I would sit down and I would go from house to house to house and see how much taxes went up and see what that generates for the town.
So with every development, every house put in Massachusetts, for every dollar in tax money that house is paying, it's $1.16 in services that house is using from the town. That is, it's a study I read today. Additionally, which I had read today because I'm making a case in a different town, is that for every dollar spent on, it's a 7-to-1 ratio, where it's costs $7 for every dollar of value that's destroyed when you're dealing with properties like in the flood zone. So I don't know. There needs to be more of a study at it because, as we know, you can make numbers look like whatever you want. You can have it tell whatever story you want. But I completely disagree that saying, as the Conservation Commission, we need to let people build bigger houses in the resource area at the expense of the resource area for the town to bring in more money. That is so conflicting with our charge that it's borderline like.
I'm not being disrespectful when I say this, but you
Yeah.
say it's just numbers. $4,000 to me isn't just numbers. That's what my taxes went up.
Right.
So those aren't just numbers.
And you live on the water with a water view and all these other
So
things.
what does that have to do with it?
It's not, I guarantee it wasn't just that house that caused your taxes to go up, and I'd have to look at it.
And I will do my homework, but I can tell you right now, there was talk up and down that road. There were, I think, 8 residents on that road that were looking to hire an attorney to try to get an abatement.
Well, was there other stuff going on? I'm so
No,
confused.
that was just the one house.
Just yours?
No, not mine. There was a house across the street from me that was being built. And once they got their CO, everybody got assessed a value on that house. And I know this, there's a house 2 houses down that's being built right now. I guarantee when that house
Yeah.
gets built,
Everybody
taxes-
goes.
That all goes back to property values, right?
does,
So,
but I
so you
guess-
go,
and I'm-
so if.
I'm getting off subject,
yeah,
but
you get-
property
you know,
values
the
bring
value of
in
your
revenue to the town. And I've
Yeah,
said this
and property values go up when they're next to conserved areas also. Like, there are so many other mechanisms to drive up property values that, like, hinging it on gambling away the resource area and just saying, you can build
Right.
as much and destroy the wetlands because it's going to increase it and we're going to be a rich town is insane.
So.
So,
I-
hold on,
I
hold
think-
on.
So.
So
It
here.
has to be a
No,
case.
right now, hold on. Our task right now is to look at the draft of Regulation 25. I don't want to sound crude, but I'm concerned about tax values because I pay taxes in this town as well. But tax values and property values have nothing to do with what we're looking at. What I want to see this commission focus on right here and now is the wording in the draft of 25 to see if that's viable for you people to go forward. That's why we're looking at this. And believe me when I tell you this has been going on it'll be 2 years in July. So many of you that are sitting here weren't even on the commission when this started. And it has to come to some kind of closure. It may not be the most perfect document in the world because there are none. There's something wrong with every document out there. And we might pull this right back in another year and say, guess what? We've got to get back in here and do some more work because we didn't address this or we missed that, like the 500 typo. So I'd like to just, get through the rest of these edits and see.
Can I add one last thought to the case-by-case wording? That, like, if someone comes before me when I look at a project, if they're making a good faith effort to add mitigation plantings and to, like, have it's a little bit of a negotiation where they're making an effort to, like, give something up to get what they want that might not be something we would typically allow, like, that's, I think, where the discretion of the commission comes in. It's like,
It allows
what do
for
we
that
also get?
creativity too, that we talk about,
The
creative
creativity,
solutions,
yeah.
Right.
alternative methods. That we've seen some really cool, innovative things come before the commission just in the year that I've been here. That wouldn't have been permissible if we didn't have language to evaluate it on a case-by-case
And
basis.
the ultimate task that everybody has to keep foremost is protection of the resource area.
Yeah.
That's what this whole thing is about.
Right.
And Regulation 25 right now that we're using does not protect the resource area. That's why we've been laboring on this for a couple of years. And I think the document that we have here is about as good as it's going to get, unless somebody comes up with.
No, so I like it.
something.
What would you
But let's
like us
continue,
to
because there's a
move?
couple of other things in here that I wanted to
I just
point out.
want to answer
Yes.
one of Richard's question. As for for plans and everything, there's a couple ways to do it. There's a certain level of plans you need to file an NOI, but you could come up with a site plan, a preliminary plan, a discussion with this board informally on the comment section, or ask for put on agenda informally, and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking about. Get everybody's opinion before they go ahead and spend all the money with the attorneys and the full-blown site.
So you're willing to, because I know this has come up before, like, people come in, agents, or the people come in and say, you don't have house plans, you don't have, like, so you're willing to forego that portion of it?
No, just as an informal,
They're engaging the temperature.
yeah,
It's not
just an informal discussion saying, I'm thinking about doing this.
would you
and-
guys allow it?
Yeah.
We've had that before, where
Yeah.
people are like, I want to do this. Do you want it as an RDA or NOI? Here are the reasons why.
Yeah.
Yeah, most recently with the PBA and Dean's Pond Vista pruning, that was
Sure.
just very recent. If I could just add in one quick comment, Bob, 'cause I know we want to move along, for Rich's comment. Rich, just so, and you can go back and look at or continue previous draft iterations of performance standard number 2. Previous wording was to the effect of prohibiting a number of these activities as opposed to describing them as being, reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So this is actually much more open to, the commission to deliberate, as opposed to the previous language where it just listed a bunch of different activities that used the word prohibited. So that's really what this is about. The spirit of this is to allow the commission to have the opportunity and the applicant to present, see what it's all about, use the performance standards to guide you, and that's really what case by case means.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions on the first couple of performance standards. Is now the right time, or?
The first couple?
Yep, performance standard 1, and then actually, it looks like performance standard 6.
Well, I didn't even get to 5 yet, but.
Okay.
You want to do 1 again?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I missed it. I guess I just wanted to know with regards to the table
Yep.
and the percent retention of naturally vegetated area within a parcel. I just wanted to know what the litmus for impact was in determining those figures. Is it impeding the sizes of homes, or is it protecting the critical characteristics? Because I would think that in terms of, protecting the ecological characteristics, we would have a set percentage per lot size that might even be bigger on the smaller lots than it would be on the larger lots.
Well,
That would be my leaning.
If you go bigger on the smaller lots, you're actually precluding any kind of development.
But
because-
that's what I'm asking. So is that the litmus that we're going for with these numbers, is to ensure that folks can still build, or is it actually retaining the
We're
critical
allowing the
characteristics?
capability to build, but restricting the amount of natural vegetation that they can take down.
I see.
And even, as it says in here, even if somebody comes in, like say they're at 10,000 or 20,000 square feet and it says 40%, and we're looking at this, and we're looking at all the situations around this lot that may require more than that, It says right there, the percentages of retention of naturally vegetated areas in the above table may be subject to change by the commission. It's hard, I mean, there's just no way that you can look at the entire town of Mashpee right now and say, well, what is actually out there for an undeveloped lot? You could, but it would take you a year of time going around and.
And why would you?
Yeah, let it come to you.
Well, land management, usually you have
Well,
like
yeah,
a
but-
priority resource that you're looking at, and there are some standards there, and I wasn't sure if that's what informed this, or if that's what we were going for.
I was the one that took the figures from the existing 25, and I said, okay, here's my thought. Why less than 5,000 says nothing? Let's make that 20%.
Sure.
That's a big jump. And then I said, for simplicity, let's break it right down the line, 20, 30, 40, 50. And then, let's get some kind of a disclaimer in there, because we can't foresee all of the lots, especially in a subdivision type of situation that could come
Understood.
upon us tomorrow. So that's where those numbers came from.
Thank you.
Yep. I want to go down to 5, as you perhaps
Paul,
remember.
could, I just have, yes, 5, yeah, thank you, sorry, that's where I,
We had language in here which came from the town of Tisbury, but the language was not identical to what was in the town of Tisbury's performance standard. I think that was performance standard 6 for that town. So what's highlighted in yellow is the exact language from the town of Tisbury, and the proposal is to go with that rather than what we had in there. After I looked at this, it's almost kind of like the 500, 5,000 typo that we found in our own regulation. If you read it, it doesn't say slower than, it just says a rate of 5 minutes per inch. It should be slower than, because the other one is faster than. So they left off that concept of 5 minutes per inch or less, slower.
And you changed that.
Well, I did that in my comment. I said, this is
Your
the
comment,
exact
right.
language under Tisbury's,
Right.
but I think it needs to state slower than 5 minutes per inch. This is the wording from the Tisbury regulation, but the words slower than are apparently missing from their printed version. It just doesn't read
I
right.
thought that was a good catch on your
It
part.
doesn't read right.
Yeah.
Just for super clarification, is it a rate of 5 and slower? And/or slower, or is it like less than 5?
It would be 5 or less.
Okay.
Like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Around
Perfect.
here, you know what it's
Sure
going to be.
you-
It's going to be less than 2 minutes an inch. I mean, that's pretty much what we deal with in these.
Right, so just, I guess, make sure that if 5 is allowed, that just make sure the wording is
And
right.
this doesn't prohibit somebody from putting it in. It's just going to make them give the proper separation from the groundwater.
Right.
This is intended to protect groundwater,
Yeah.
not to restrict development.
So I have a question on 5.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so it says, except for upgrade or replacement of failed cesspools or septic system as determined by Board of Health, no increase in flow septic will be placed in LSCSF soils with percolation rate. It says, no newly constructed system except for an upgrade, replacement of failed cesspool septic system. So, number 2 says you can rebuild a house. But now number 5 saying you can't put in a new septic system, you can only upgrade what's there. So if you're saying that on an undeveloped lot and we're gonna allow a house, you can't put in a septic system, or say that house that on 42 Nick Trail got approved tonight, well, maybe the septic system is passing, but
Right.
they're gonna go put in an IA system, and so this doesn't address that situation. Because it doesn't say, for reconstructed homes, or for homes in, number 2, septic system, new septic systems are allowed.
This would apply to both undeveloped and reconstructed. And again, you're not saying that you can't do it. You can do it, but you've got to create that separation from the groundwater.
Yeah, but it says,
Mounted system.
no newly constructed septic, except for upgrade, replacement of failed cesspool or septic system. So, okay, 42 Nick Trail tonight. This septic system wasn't in failure.
But no, it's
It
not.
wasn't a cesspool.
It's not saying that, Steve. It's saying no newly constructed septic system. But if you go down further, it doesn't say that it can't be. It says shall be placed in land subject to coastal flow in soils with the percolation rate of, and so you're giving those rates. So you can put it in, as long as you meet those rates, is what.
Yeah, but it says, the first one says, except for upgrade or replacement of failed cesspool or septic system. That's the first sentence. And then further down in the change, no newly constructed septic system,
Unless you're upgrading it.
unless you're upgrading or
Right.
replacement,
Right.
so.
What do you want to
I'm not-
exchange it for?
So, on the reconstructing, you're saying that's an upgrade?
That's an upgrade.
That's an
Yeah.
upgrade,
Right, because the system's already in the ground.
okay.
But if
But it says, except for an upgrade replacement of a failed cesspool or
Or
septic
septic.
system.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't say, it should say no newly constructed septic system, except for an upgrade replacement. Get rid of a failed cesspool or septic system, because you already had that in the first sentence. So it's like repeating it.
Yeah.
And the word upgrade, to your point, could mean two different things. Upgrade would go from 3 to 5 bedroom, or a septic system that's been in 15, 20 years, you're just putting a new one. I consider that an upgrade.
Right, but then it says, it's defining an upgrade only of a failed cesspool or septic system. So that, but even though you said, except for an upgrade of replacement failed cesspool or septic system in the first sentence. So it's kind of,
Well, yeah, and
It's
it
not-
says
Can you
no.
fix it with an and/or, Steve?
well, no, I think you said in the sentence, it says no newly constructed, except for an upgrade replacement. I think we should be end of sentence there, and get rid of a failed cesspool or septic system behind it.
Let me just mark that. Hold on.
If there was a failed septic system now, and we looked at that on that property over off of Red Brook Road, and I can't remember, I think it was Sandy Way, right? We would be expecting the septic system that goes in to be to current specs with the town and with this regulation.
Yeah.
Right?
Was that
To
the
meet
one that
those,
put in a bigger one?
huh?
Was that the house that put in a bigger one?
No, they had a failed system, they had a failed septic system, and they had to replace the septic system.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it
And
could
we
be
would
tried.
want them to conform
Because,
to our performance standards, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So the concept of except for failed sewer or septic, strike that concept. Because what we're saying is any new septic system that goes in the wetlands has to go to this performance standard.
So it should just say, no newly constructed septic system, except for an upgrade or replacement, shall be placed in land subject to coastal storm flowage and soils with percolation rate, blah, blah, blah. So it's taking out basically 4 lines of jargon that just make it more confusing. Is, I think, what
yeah.
Steve is going for.
So where do you want that no newly constructed septic system sentence to end?
So you
I'm trying to get a handle on this.
upgrade, where it says upgrade/replacement?
So period after replacement?
Nope, just strike of a, and then the next line, the next line, the next line, and the majority of the next line until it says shall be. Shall be is where that sentence then comes together.
I'm not even seeing shall be.
Yeah, right after health inspector.
So it's no newly
To
constructed
fail
system
immediate future is determined by registered.
shall be placed.
Shall be, okay, I see it. So let me just strike that.
Yeah.
So no newly constructed septic system except for an upgrade/replacement shall be placed in land subject to coastal storm flowage and soils with blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Because this covers a failed septic system, this covers an upgrade to an IA system in the event of a new construction, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But it will not allow them to increase the size of the septic from, say, a 3 to 4? Or
No, because up further, it says no
It's no
increase in
increase in
flow shall
flow.
be placed.
Yep,
i-
With the
in
soil
soils
conditions.
with a certain
Yeah.
rate.
That all comes out.
with the
Yeah.
perk.
So as long as the
You're not
site
reading this
goes to
right.
the flowage,
Oh, the
they
whole
could
top
put
part
it
The
at
whole
that.
top part comes out. It's only the part in yellow that would be performance standard
Mine's
5.
red, but yeah, I think I get what
Okay.
you're saying.
Got the little yellow bar by it.
You know, there are a whole slew of other things that would control the increase in flow, primarily Chapter 108, which isn't our purview, but, I mean, it does knock on our door because you're looking at protection of groundwater. And then you might have some areas that are in groundwater protection zone 2. So there's a lot of different other variables that would come into looking at the number of bedrooms that would be approved by this commission or by the Board of Health. Not so much Regulation 25.
Why would we take the language out for no increase in flow?
It's just changing, I think it's just to match Tisbury's, because they've already done that. But I
Right.
think it's still, the way I read this, it's still not supposed to be increased, but it doesn't spell it out.
Yeah, it doesn't say that. It says a lot about the soil conditions. How diverse are the perk rates and the soil conditions here? I mean, it's all the same soil type, right? It's,
I think it varies.
It varies a little bit. Yeah, there's some variations in Mashpee. For the
get
most
some
part, you're
clay
looking at
here.
Carver Sands, but
yeah.
there's some loamy soils and rocky soils in Mashpee as well.
Okay.
We don't see them very often, but
The USGS soil map has us all as Carver Sandy Loam, just for everybody's
yeah.
geek moment with Commissioner
You know,
Thornburg.
primarily in LSCSF, you're gonna see sandy soils. I mean,
Right.
How much does
Steve,
this,
did we get your language? Well, let's
Yeah, I
get
got
some,
that.
I want to get to some language
I
here.
got the
I'm ready
strikeout
to
on
vote
that.
for you. Let's just
I got
get
the
it.
I don't
strikeout
know
on
if we're
that.
gonna get to vote for it tonight. though.
What?
does this deviate a lot from what the Board of Health talks about in,
Shouldn't.
Mass 310C? Because I geeked out a moment about septic systems this morning. Just something I never thought I'd do, but there was a lot of talk about 15 minutes versus 5 minutes. So I'm assuming,
Interesting.
huh?
Interesting.
Yeah, you have to get up into central mass for that. When you start reading the state standards, it's for the whole state.
Yeah, but the state standard says 15, right?
Right.
So this is much more restricted than the
Right,
state
this is
standard,
a-
which I'm not saying
This
is
is a
probably appropriate.
local bylaw, which is
but-
more stringent
okay.
than what the state.
So then it goes back to, I couldn't find any reference to flow rate on the Mashpee Board of Health site. So I'm just thinking that we publish this, is it clear enough that we won't have a lot of people arguing with us over which,
They're gonna argue one way or another.
they will argue, but I mean,
But if it's gonna be flow rate, then that would be kicked over to Board of Health in
Oh.
Chapter 108. And then it'd either be the Board of Health, or it would go to the Sewer Commission if it's in a sewer-serviced area
that's,
down the
yeah,
road.
so,
And
well,
it-
given
it's out
most of
our-
the-
It's out of our call at that
yeah,
point.
but most of the wetlands are part of
What
the,
this regulation is really focused at doing is increasing the distance between the bottom of that discharge effluent area and the groundwater.
Groundwater, yeah.
I mean, we've got
Yep, no.
systems that have come in here in the last couple of years that have been asking for variances of 4 feet. You know, and they're sitting in sand that's less than 2 minutes of an inch, and it's going right into the groundwater. This is saying, hey, no, we're gonna raise this up, we're gonna create a bigger distance, and if it does in some cases mean that it's gotta be mounded on the surface, then that's what it has to be.
so I agree, I'm very supportive of this clause. My question was more, how much of a departure is this language from what the Board of Health would be telling people? Huh?
I have no idea. That's a
Yeah,
great question.
I couldn't-
Because that will be the friction point that we will all have to wrestle with.
Will they-
I mean, it
It's gonna be a
depends.
friction point
Huh?
moving forward for an awful
A long
long
time, and maybe that's okay, but we know we're taking it on,
Differences
and we
from
know
there,
we'll.
they'd have to
Okay.
appeal to both of them. They would have to-
And then my other question, Paul, to you, just, and again, I will defer to your expertise on this, is there are all the new IA systems and kind of what is commercially available today. People will have the ability to put a system in to be able to meet these standards.
Oh, yeah. there's
There
no
are
question.
lots of
Okay,
options.
okay, that
There
was
are
just,
state standards for
Okay.
urine diversion
Huh?
systems.
I like where your head's at.
so it's just, that was just more like, we're not saying you gotta go
Yeah, you
buy
don't wanna
from
create a
one
bar you can't
weird
jump
ass
over.
company in Sweden or something like that.
This is not- Especially
Okay.
with the sledgehammer
Yeah,
system.
okay.
I mean,
Then I'm fine, those were my
none of them
questions
are
on
cheap,
that.
but they're one of the most inexpensive ones.
Yeah,
and
it's
easier
working
to
well,
do.
too, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so we got through 5.
Yay.
Number 6 6. Now, Sarah, you said, you said you had a question on 6, so I'll defer to you on that. What was that question?
Yeah, I just had a question on the language, and forgive me, I think I had the wrong version that I read before the meeting, so I don't know if I read it several times in that one, but I see it at least once here in Performance Standard 6, where we added language to meet the current building code, and I just want to, I know that we've had conversations around the state building codes versus home rule authority for conservation regulations. I know that we've had opposing guidance from changing town council.
Right.
I'm not quite sure where things are right now. My understanding is that our current town council has advised us that they're not going to defend if we have something that's more stringent than the state building codes, but I do know in a lot of other municipalities in Massachusetts, home rule authority does take precedent over state building codes and other state codes. So I just want to make sure that by including this language here, that we're considering whether or not we are relinquishing our home rule authority to establish building standards as pertains to protecting the resource areas, even if they do not match the state building codes. I wonder if we could just take that language out to just retain the option in the future, as we have in the past.
Right, like would it be giving up our ability to ask
Are
for
we
something
giving up-
better for the resource area because
Correct.
it meets building code?
Right, because there, you know, there is that generality that the home rule authority does give municipalities permission to come up with their own bylaws that can be more stringent than state codes and standards. So I just want to make sure we're not giving that up here.
Right.
Can I ask a process question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
If you're going to vote on this tonight, I'll stay. I really need to be gone soon, but if you need me so that we'll have a vote on the whole thing,
Right.
that would make a difference.
Yeah,
If you don't think
I
we
would like
will.
to get this adopted tonight, if at all possible. If it can't be, it can't be, but if at all
You can leave, though,
possible,
because you still have a
we've
quorum.
incorporated the edits in several times.
This happens to be an
Sarah,
extremely
going back to
important
your
regulation
issue
to
very
my
quickly.
neighbors.
This is not for foundations. These are the other types of walls rather than a foundation, because the building code is already there.
Sure,
It
I
has to
just,
be on
I just mean the
piles. It's coastal
language.
A.
Is the
So-
language necessary to meet our needs to protect the resource areas, and does it compromise our ability to enact stricter standards than the state building codes in the future, or on a condition?
I don't think it
particular-
compromises our ability to do anything with these other walls, because it says exacerbate erosion in adjoining areas. That's something that would have to be proved beyond the preponderance of a doubt to the commission. If somebody wants to put a 4-foot retaining wall near some house that's up on piles, they're gonna have to prove to this commission that it's not gonna exacerbate erosion in adjoining areas. Good luck. I don't see how you could possibly do that with any kind of a wall, even a 2-foot wall. So I don't think we're giving up anything other than saying, if it meets the current building code, if applicable, we're recognizing that building code, but we're saying, yeah, okay, it's there. But now you prove that that's not exacerbating erosion to adjoining areas. That's a hard one to get over. And that's what that is allowing us to do. So I felt comfortable with that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know,
Okay.
what
And-
really led
and
up
this
to
was
whole
in
thing
when
was the
council
pile
looked
issue
at
that
it?
we had to suffer through for a
I
few
think-
years.
Yeah, right.
It goes to
right,
council after we vote.
Well, it's been to council once already.
Oh, but this looks like a new addition.
This, has this,
No, this
has,
is- Yeah, this has all been looked at by council.
Council, right?
Except
So
for the
that-
few
yeah.
edits that
Yeah.
are now in
Okay.
here since our last meeting.
And we're not going back again.
Yeah, and I don't think we have to go back on that.
No, we don't have to go back to council because it's all contextually really, pretty much the same language, just some tweaks here and there and some clarifications, redefinitions, things like that. Just wanted to clarify, when it comes time for voting, you are voting to accept this as the final iteration. You're not voting to promulgate because you need public comment hearing first, and then you need a promulgation hearing. So any vote tonight should, just be to, if a vote is to take place, to accept the language to move forward for a public comment hearing. You're not adopting any regulations tonight.
Exactly.
I just have two small changes, number 7.
Number 7.
Yeah, we still have the AO zones in. I thought we were gonna remove the AO zones out
The following activities.
from,
I don't even know what the hell an AO is.
I know, that's what, it's confusing because it's not listed anywhere else.
Alex, don't sign that one.
Yeah, so we have AO zone, the first sentence, and then under D, we have AO zone, so. I think we all agreed that didn't make any sense, right, Drew?
Well, yeah, the AO zones are associated with riverfront, streams and rivers, and, for Cape Cod geologically, locally, for groundwater fed, all of our rivers and streams are groundwater fed, they're not surface water fed. They all originate from groundwater, so the likelihood of rivers overtopping their banks on Cape Cod and southeastern Massachusetts is extremely unlikely because of our porous soil. So I don't know, I don't think we brought this up in discussion. Steve, my apologies. In bylaw review subcommittee, I neglected to bring that up, but it makes sense to, I think, leave that out because you're not going to see flooding in AO zones to any significant degree just based on the local Cape Cod geology.
Yep. Okay. Other than that, and everything else looked good.
So I have a real nit, but it's on A, and do we want to see where you say existing buildings, roads, and driveways? Should that be a separate bullet? That's my big.
Under what?
So,
Under D?
7A, right? You
7A,
talk about the
okay.
new construction, and then you go into existing. For clarity, do you want to make it a separate bullet?
Existing buildings, roads, parking lots.
It's just really just giving it a.
No, I think it's okay to have either new or existing.
Okay.
The A is just so that if we are needing to reference our rationale for saying, no, we're not going to approve this thing, we could say Regulation 25-7A.
Got it.
I don't think we could break it out if.
We could separate it out as B just for readability. And
It's two
clear
different things.
separation.
To me, it's two different concepts. So
Yeah.
putting the two different concepts
All right,
together.
so-
Easy-
But
easy
it's
fix.
like a,
Just formatting.
yeah, it's formatting.
Yeah, formatting, we
Got
can
in
make
that.
that change, yeah.
Yeah,
And I
one-
think we're trying to, in other places, separate existing from undeveloped, so
It's
it
consistent.
stays consistent with the
Yeah, I've got it
document.
here on my screen, it was just hitting the return
Yeah,
key.
there you
It
go.
became- Okay,
So we're taking the AO zones out.
we're taking the AO zone
Places
out.
under 7, so you
Right.
gotta get them all.
I believe I took that language from somewhere else.
So to expedite things, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to accept,
Can I just ask one other
Dra-
thing?
no.
So on 10, there's this funky language in here about the applicant will be given the opportunity to rebuke this presumption based on the provisions of blah, blah, blah. Did council add that in? It's kind of seemed like a weird thing to add to.
It's existing language,
This
Is it
language-
just-
Donna.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been in the bylaw since its inception,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah, that's nothing new.
okay.
okay, so
Is
I'm gonna make a
something-
motion to accept draft 8 of Regulation 25 with the changes that we discussed and approved tonight.
Yeah, that's,
Okay,
Second.
so we have a motion on the table and seconded to accept the draft, inclusive of the changes that we made tonight.
get it out to the public. Because that's going to be another whole fun.
Somebody have a balloon or a cake or something. Okay, motion made and seconded, up for discussion? No. We're okay? Let me take a roll call vote. We have all 7 commissioners here, this is good. Steve?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Nicely
Job.
done, subcommittee.
passes. We're not there yet, but
Well,
No, but
Lot of
this,
hard work.
It's
it's the
a
next
big,
step in the
this
process,
big,
which is good.
this big
Thank you.
milestone. Should be celebrating.
we should celebrate.
Brown here.
I served in the legislature, we would go through
We
10,000
get back to
bills.
our agenda.
I have funny
Just
things.
this way.
Mine printed funky.
Yeah, I think we're
Enforcement
And
order.
gonna,
I'm like reading this, I'm
I
like,
think I have to
going to my
go.
husband, this is a
I do.
footnote, right? Where's the?
could we
Our
move?
next agenda item,
Let's.
Mr. Chairman, could I request that we move up to enforcement order?
Yes,
I'd really like to get that out of the way.
I was going to call that next, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank
Which
you.
Step
one?
ahead of you. Okay.
Okay, on,
Take care.
on discussion
Going?
enforcement order 87
May I?
Hoop Pole Road, and I'm going to refer that to Drew, because I know we talked a little bit about this project at our last meeting, and apparently there's been more development. So Drew,
Do
you've
you
got
need
the
me
floor.
here for this?
Yeah, thank you. So you should all have a copy of the enforcement order that I drafted up. for this property owner, as you all recall, failed the certificate of compliance inspection. One of the COCs passed, that was for the house and vista pruning. This was for the restoration plantings that were required by the commission through the submission of a notice of intent from the homeowner to address some violations that took place on the property. This was subsequent to the construction of the home and establishment of the property. So what I did was draft up this enforcement order. I would like to have the commissioners sign it tonight. It has all the information, deadlines that the homeowner is required to adhere to. Most notably, and I'll try to be quick with this, we're not going with his previous landscaper because he did not follow up accordingly to the previous enforcement order and the order of conditions that was issued. His plan was accepted by the commission back then, but he never followed through as far as the number of plantings, the monitoring, the maintaining, all of that. So I spoke with the homeowner. I was very upfront and blunt about this, that the commission wanted to start issuing daily fines. And if you don't start to cooperate exactly with the terms and deadlines of this enforcement order as detailed, we will start issuing daily fines of $300 per day for each day of any non-compliance or any delays with these deadlines. And as recently as today, I gave him, this was last week, I gave him a list of 2 companies that are quite reputable when it comes to restoration, landscaping, and mitigation. That's Crawford Land Management and Tyler Gaudreau of Ecological Landscape Solutions. He has gone with Tyler. I met with Tyler out at the property today with the property owner. They're getting things ready to go to follow up, to put in the plantings that were required on that plan, do it the right way, get a contract signed. Everything is in place to adhere to all of those deadlines that you see, and we will be getting full compliance expeditiously. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, good job, Drew.
Good job, Drew.
Thank you, Drew.
Yeah.
Thanks, Drew.
You're welcome.
We need a
Just
minute.
please be sure to sign it so I can
want you
send
to
it to him.
We need a minimum of 4 signatures,
Oh,
correct?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
We good.
We got them?
Yep.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we've got them. We're good.
ready. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Maria.
I know, I gotta get home.
Let me move to the next discussion item. I know Alex had to leave and Sarah's on her way out now, so on Climate Resilience Initiative and Resolution, I would take a motion to table that because the co-authors are not here to
Yep.
discuss it.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, Steve?
Aye.
Marjorie? Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
You still got a quorum?
Yes, we're
Yeah,
good,
good.
Marjorie, yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Marjorie.
Take care,
Yeah,
Marjorie.
good to
Take
see
care.
you, up and at 'em. It's good. Keep up the good work. It's good to see you, like, not on the screen. Good that you're feeling
It's
better.
good to be here. You're still alive, I'm still alive.
Okay,
My daughter is alive.
water quality issues, anybody have anything they want to bring forward?
No.
Okay, I'm just looking at this, because this thing came out after, no, it is on here, it's under updates. What I was gonna say under water quality is that the source to sea community engagement has been postponed to May
Third.
3rd, right? A tragic thing, but those things do happen, unfortunately. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to either Drew or Dan for the updates. You want to tell us how many hearings are going by, or whatever?
Yeah, so there's quite a few. All 3 runs are active now, so we're in the thick of the season, which is good to see. We've got a lot of sand loading issues in the Mashpee River, but it's not to the level of the Mashpee Herring Run, rather. It's not to the level where it's impeding fish passage at all. It's just a future maintenance issue we're going to have to tackle once this migration season is over. Still working on redesign or construction of a nature-like fishway for the Santuit Pond fish ladder. We're hoping that will be actually in place. It'll be reviewed, permitted, and constructed hopefully by next year. That's a big hope, but that's what I'm targeting, and I hope that will be the case. Chopstick Bog, Sunco, the contractor's coming back just to regrade the access road around the bog because it got, a little ripped up from construction activity. So that will be taking place, as well as installation of informational signage about the project itself, the history of the bogs, and why we do restoration projects like this. And yeah, I think those were kind of the highlights as far as updates, and I'd be happy to answer questions on any other updates if the commission has any.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
Any questions? They all had that look like they want to leave.
Still no word
Are
from the
there,
tribe.
are there any other, because it's on the agenda, so I'll ask for it, other additional topics that somebody wants to bring up?
Make
I
sure
got
you
a
check with the
question.
ticks.
I got a question,
Dan says
maybe
check the
Dan
ticks.
or Drew, you could, it came up earlier tonight, that gentleman, engineer with the plans for the aluminum dock, and then they had the stairway. I know up in Maine, the lakes of Maine, you can't have like pressure-treated, like stairways near the water. Is that a regulation that we need to?
No, here it's not a regulation. The only regulation we have when it pertains to pressure-treated wood is you can't cut it over the water or around the water. So you have to cut it upland. Oops, sorry about that. You have to cut it upland and then bring the wood down already pre-cut.
Okay.
When it comes to construction purposes, no, we don't have anything of that nature.
Okay. Just curious on that. Yeah.
The alternative to pressure-treated would be more detrimental to the water quality than the PT. Hopefully, somewhere down the road, they're going to come up with something better, but
Right.
that's what we have to work with now.
Does anybody know the pond that's in front of the Knockabout Brewery,
Mill
that's
pond?
across from that? They've
Yeah.
got a bunch of
Silt barriers.
soap areas and stuff
They are
in
going
there.
to stay.
Huh?
They're going to stay.
Yeah, that was for, the commission had approved, because of the Mass Office of Dam Safety, there were tree removals that had to come out from the dam. Because that whole stretch where Mill Pond meets Route 130,
Yeah.
that is defined as a dam by the state of Massachusetts Office of Dam Safety, based on the impoundment of water that it holds. And so those trees had to come out because the root systems were compromising the integrity of the dam. And that area where the tree roots, where the trees were cut, that embankment basically that was stripped of vegetation and then subsequently layered with erosion matting is going to be planted with grass. That matting is there just to keep the material in place and prevent it from eroding into the pond while the area, gets prepped for grass planting.
And that was probably got before us prior to me.
That was right before you came on.
Okay.
Like, I mean, a month or two. before
It
you
was
came
one
on.
of those things, I'm like, I can't remember us talking about that, so I was like,
Yeah, it was, I
I'm
think it was
driving
just
around
before
looking
your
for
arrival.
somebody doing bad things.
We hear about it all the time.
Okay.
There'll be more coming, so don't feel disappointed. Okay, anything else? No? I
Motion to
accept the
adjourn.
motion. Thanks, Steve. Is there a second? Thank you, Sandy. Roll call vote, Steve? Yes. Sandy?